Welcome into Hoopsville, everybody, and to another Sunday evening. I am your host, Dave McHugh. We are coming from the WBCA and ABC studios, of course, presented by D3Hoops.com. A lot to cover tonight, and we will try and get to a lot of it, and we're trying to be a little bit quick about it as well. First and foremost, it's chaos in Division III. Not really, but somewhat. It, of course, has been fascinating to watch the top 25 in at least men's basketball go through the topsy-turvies that is Division III basketball. It has been a lot about parity this year, and we once again have a lot of losses in the top 25. Amherst lost to Eastern Connecticut earlier this week, 87-75. Whitworth lost to Pacific, 90-88 on Friday night. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the first time Pacific has beaten Whitworth at all since 2008. First time I think they've beaten Whitworth at Whitworth since 2004. I may have that backwards, but incredible win for Pacific. Eau Claire lost to River Falls. We mentioned that on Thursday night's show. They then went on to beat Whitewater. Whitewater's, after starting undefeated, has lost 2 in a row in conference play. I think that number 11 ranking was too high in the first place. I wasn't even voting for him, and we'll see what happens. You don't want to be Wesleyan. Wesleyan came into the week undefeated, 11-0. Remember, had the win over Marietta. Lost to Rhode Island College, 62-55. Lost to Middlebury, 83-65. And lost to Hamilton, 92-76. Not even close. None of those games, except for the Rhode Island College game, were close. Wesleyan was number 9. Even I'm thinking about maybe we were a little too quick on Wesleyan, though I like the Cardinals. I like what they look like. I thought the Marietta win was beyond solid. Doesn't look that way now. North Park lost to Carthage earlier in the week. I wonder if Carthage, how much love they may get. Then beat North Central, 76-73. Whitewater, as we mentioned, lost both games to La Crosse and Eau Claire this week. Marietta lost to Ohio Northern 101-91. Marietta now 9-4, which surprises me. The rest of the top 25, 14 through 22, unscathed, which is saying something for a change. New Jersey City played one game this week, lost to Montclair State. I saw that game earlier in the week. Let's call it bad luck. I still like New Jersey City. They'll come down. They'll fall out of the top 25 most likely. They won't fall out of my ballot. And then Williams lost 2 out of 3. Enters the top 25 at number 25. Beats Oneonta 74-62. Then loses to Amherst 80-72 and loses to Trinity today 65-73. And there are 14 losses in those receiving votes. Emory lost to Rochester. Wartburg lost to Loris this week. Lycoming lost to Lebanon Valley. North Central lost to Augustana and North Park. Endicott lost to Western New England. We'll learn more about that coming up in the show. Brockport played 3 games and lost 2. Lost the first one to Carnegie Mellon, lost the third one to Geneseo. Bethel lost to St. Thomas. Chicago lost to WashU on one of the craziest plays you have ever seen. We'll try and get that for you in a moment. Virginia Wesleyan lost to Randolph-Macon. WPI lost to Springfield and MIT. And Misericordia lost to FDU Florham. It was one of those weeks in Division III, again, at least on the men's side, to say the least. On the women's side, a little bit more status quo, but still some upsets there to talk about. And it starts in the top 5. Number 5, WashU losing to Chicago 75-68 on Saturday to start UAA play. Carnegie Mellon lost to Case Western Reserve 87-78. We'll talk a lot more about the UAA coming up in this show. Bowdoin, number 17 in the country, lost to number 1 Tufts. Really no surprise there. Wheaton lost to Illinois Wesleyan by 1. And Calvin lost to Trine to start the week. In the receiving votes category, this is where the women's losses piled up. NYU lost to Brandeis. So all the top teams in NYU, most of the top teams in the UAA lost, except for Rochester this weekend. Hartwick lost to Ithaca. Ithaca lost to Hartwick. Marymount lost to number 7 Christopher Newport today. It's not a shocking loss. Augustana lost to Wheaton. Baldwin Wallace lost to Mount Union and Wilmington. Lewis and Clark lost to George Fox and Puget Sound. Granted, taking on 2 teams ranked ahead of them, probably not a shocker there, but certainly doesn't help their cause. Stevens Point lost to Oshkosh on Wednesday, and Williams lost to Amherst No surprise there on Friday. So a little bit more losses in the women's top 25. Definitely want to show you this video out of Chicago before we got to get going with the rest of the show, because there's a lot to talk about tonight or today in the on the show, and we'll get you the means of what we're getting to in just a moment. Just bear with me. I'm looking for my direct link. That would be a lot more helpful to get to the video I want. And here it is. So Chicago and WashU came down to the end. Well, wrong video. Of course it was. Here it is. Nope. Wrong link. We'll have to get it another way. If you didn't see the Chicago finish yesterday, it was insane. Chicago and WashU battling to the end. Of course, this game is at Chicago. And it came down to who was going to be able to take the last shot and survive, essentially. For WashU, it ended up being very much in their favor, which was obviously good for them. We have a couple angles of this, and I'm trying to call up the best one for you. So bear with me. I thought I had this, and I don't. And this is also because a testament today of how crazy today was in general. It was a busy day. We have got a lot, it all related around the show. So one of those things where you couldn't, here we go. Here is the ending of the WashU Chicago game. Chicago hits a basket with about 13 or so seconds left. And that's when basically chaos erupted. We'll get rid of our graphics so you can try, you're not going to be able to see it anyway, but you'll try and enjoy it, and well, good luck. Seconds left. And that's when basically chaos erupted. We'll get rid of our graphics so you can try, you're not going to be able to see it anyway, but you'll try and enjoy it, and well, good luck.
Guarded by Howard. Kusera driving baseline. Throws it out. Jakes up. Takes it in. We'll try it. No good. Ball's tipped. Let's play 5 more minutes.
So what's the outcome of that? Goaltending. Hit the shot while it was still coming down to the rim. Everybody, hope you despite the fact. Sorry. So what's the outcome of that? Hit the wrong button. Goaltending. Hit the shot no matter, despite the fact that the basket had not, the ball was still in the air at the buzzer. Even though the whistles had blown, even though the buzzer had sounded, the ball's still in the air. Don't touch the ball. Unfortunately, the player did. And we'll try and show you pictures later if we have time. Actually, I have those pictures possibly. It was, first off, if you're curious if he got it in time, the answer is yes. We'll see if you can see this. Nah, you really can't. Just trust me, got the shot off in time. Second of all, the ball was in the cylinder. Clearly in the cylinder. And you can't touch the ball, even if it doesn't look like it's going to go in. If it's going to hit the rim, if it's going to be in the area of the cylinder, and if it's on its way down, it's goaltending. So WashU beat Chicago on a goaltending buzzer beater three-pointer, or maybe a deep two. I don't remember. An unbelievable finish, to say the least. Of course, there's argument of whether there was a charge there. I think it was a good no call. There's a question about whether it got off in time. Pretty sure it did. And then the goaltending. So that's a tough way to take a loss, that is for sure. We'll be talking plenty about that down the road. All right, so here's the deal. We got a lot to talk about tonight. Stevens Point was obviously the big story on Thursday. It continues to be a big story. The allegations coming out against Stevens Point, and they talk about those allegations. Basically, they got word from the NCAA. These are the allegations. These are the violations. So what are you going to do about it before we send this to the infractions committee for them to decide? So Stevens Point comes out and says Bob Semling's going to be parked for 13 games, basically the rest of the season, I should say, which equals 13 games. We're going to put Kent, their assistant coach, in charge of the team, et cetera, et cetera. Please have mercy on us, is what they're saying. What does it all mean? Well, there's a lot of questions. So we went to Brad Duckworth, the athletics director at Stevens Point, former athletics director at Alverno and women's basketball coach at Alverno. And Brad agreed to come on the show with us. We will hear from him as to the allegations and why those allegations aren't just allegations, why they mean more than just saying that they're allegations. We will also hear, and then we'll switch into to coaches. We'll hear to Alex Lang, head coach at Brooklyn. Believe it or not, the Bulldogs women's basketball team in pretty good shape. In the CUNYAC, we'll talk to him about the Atlantic region. Also coming up, we will introduce the WBCA Center Court segment. We'll talk to Thomascutty, Christy Thomascutty from Emory. We'll also talk women's basketball we'll go up back to the Central and talk Benedictine women's basketball with their head coach. And then we'll talk Endicott men's basketball out of the North East with Kevin Bentoncourt about his squad and the Triple C race. So that's all coming up here on Hoopsville. Plenty to cover, so we're going to get right to it. Coming up next, we talk to the Stevens Point men's basketball coach. The athletics director, about the men's basketball coach and the men's basketball program. It's a must-watch, must-listen-to segment. Here, pretty much the timeline. What Brad knew and what he didn't know before he took the job. And again, why these allegations are to be considered serious. He talks extensively with me. We appreciate it, and you'll hear that coming up. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. From the WBCA and ABC studios. Don't forget, at the end of the show, we'll have the Hoopsville Mailbag. If you got a question for us, email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. We've got a few submissions that we will get to, but if you have others, please send them our way. Don't forget, if you're watching this on demand or listening on the podcast and have downloaded the podcast through SoundCloud or iTunes, you can participate in the Mailbag as well. We'll take questions during the time we're not on the air and answer them when we're on the air. So make sure you email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter at D3Hoopsville as well, and much more. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. Up next, Stevens Point women's basketball and men's basketball under investigation. How the athletic director explains what's going on.
My name is Marcus Walker. I was All-State, won a state championship, a high school All-American, and played college and pro ball. I played because I love the game. I grind to be the best. I sweat because I put in work. I'm strong because I believe. When I want to bring it before game time, I come to the house that college basketball built, the CBE. No matter your skill, take it to another level. Elevate your game right here at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
Great moments are born from great opportunity. That's what you have here tonight. That's what you've earned here tonight. This is your time. Now go out there and take it.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you have been enjoying the show. Obviously, we're just getting underway. Last block kind of catching up on what we were unable to catch up on Thursday. Plenty more to talk about. We could do the show almost nightly, to be honest with you. Though, honestly, we couldn't, but we could. And we'd have plenty to talk about. And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you have been enjoying the show. Obviously, we're just getting underway. Last block kind of catching up on what we were unable to catch up on Thursday. Plenty more to talk about. We could do the show almost nightly, to be honest with you. Though, honestly, we couldn't, but we could. And we'd have plenty to talk about. Well, there appears to be a problem with our video. Isn't that convenient? We will get to solving that as soon as possible. We taped a number of segments today, and so we will move on to another segment. Unfortunately, this will throw off those who were checking in to time our show, as it were, but we will go to another segment. Unfortunately, I apologize for that, for anybody who is tuning in. We will get you the Stevens Point segment here later in the show. I'm not sure the problem. We will find a way to solve that problem and get you that segment a little bit later. In the meantime, we'll take another break. When we come back, we'll talk Benedictine women's basketball. That's coming up here on Hoopsville. You listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. More Hoopsville after this.
My name is Marcus Walker. I was All-State, won a state championship, a high school All-American, and played college and pro ball. I played because I love the game. I grind to be the best. I sweat because I put in work. I'm strong because I believe. When I want to bring it before game time, I come to the house that college basketball built, the CBE. No matter your skill, take it to another level. Elevate your game right here at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center.
This is our It's On Us pledge. It's on us to make a personal commitment to help keep all people safe from sexual assault, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, or ability.
Not to be bystanders to the problem, but to be leaders of the solution. We invite you to join us in this campaign by informing your campuses about the It's On Us mission.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
Cheer for the stumbles. The he shoulda had that's. And the tears that linger. For in those moments, greatness lies. There you will find the provoked, the determined, the unified. It's in those moments that champions are born. Cheer for the stumbles. The he shoulda had that's. And the tears that linger. For in those moments, greatness lies. There you will find the provoked, the determined, the unified. It's in those moments that champions are born.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you got any questions for us, you can always tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com, or join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Of course, you can always join us on Instagram at D3Hoopsville there as well. Don't forget, upcoming Mailbag segment, the Hoopsville Mailbag. So use that email address, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. We will try and answer your questions. Of course, the Mailbag segment, really popular for those who listen to the show not live, but via the podcast. If you'd like to download the podcast, you can find it on SoundCloud.com. You can also find it on iTunes. Don't forget, you can watch the show on demand as well. So a jam-packed show. We will keep our pace moving here a little bit. We'll jump back out into the central region, as it were, talking women's basketball and keep that theme alive as well. And let's talk about a team that probably similar to the men's team in the sense that came out of nowhere, but at the same time maybe a little bit more slowly than the men's team did last year. If you remember the men's Benedictine squad last year, they made a statement going undefeated all the way to the championship game before taking their first loss of the season. Certainly well-deserved. Well, if you haven't noticed, the women's team tried to do a little of that themselves this year. They are currently 11-2 overall. Had an 8-game winning streak. Well, unfortunately, until Saturday came along. And they lost to also fellow undefeated Wisconsin Lutheran. We'll talk a lot about that and plenty more. What exactly do we make of the Eagles? Well, their second-year head coach, Charlie Aamp, joins us here on the show. Coach, I forgot to ask you beforehand. I hope I said the name right.
It's Avercamp, but
Avercamp
works as well.
Well, we've got it now, so we're good. Again, 11-2 on the season. This is a team that, just 3 seasons ago, only won 12 games. 16 games last year. You're at least on your way to equaling, if not bettering, the last couple of seasons. You got to be thrilled with this start.
Yeah, we're off to a great start. When you look at our roster, we have no seniors on the roster, so coming into the season, we had a lot of unknowns, and the hard work and determination they put in from the summer on has just been fun to watch, and we got a lot more to go this season.
Obviously, we'll get into some of the nuances here, but real quick, started the season 3-0 with the wins over Lake Forest in overtime, Oglethorpe, and Manchester. North Central and their pesky little system offense tripped you up, but it was pretty, right and tight, 97-89. Then you went on that 8-game winning streak over Aurora and St. Mary's of Indiana, Marion, Rockford, Edgewood, Concordia, Wisconsin, Dominican, and Alverno before Wisconsin Lutheran tripped you up on Saturday. During that 8-game stretch, what was working?
Well, we had some injuries, we had some people out, so we had a lot of changes. So every kind of game was a little bit different. Some games we played really good defensively. Some games our offense just carried us through. So we've kind of had a little bit of both, but the thing that really kept us going afloat throughout was just that consistency and staying together as a team. We preach that every single day in practice, no matter how good we're playing offensively or defensively. If we stick together and continue to grow, we're going to go a long way.
If anyone's noticed on the screen, the botch attempt on my part, we have changed the logo. You are now a Whitman squad, just so you know. You can now move out to the Northwest officially. Just kidding. We'll get that fixed as we go along here. So what happened in the Wisconsin Lutheran game? Is this just a matter that Wisconsin Lutheran is just that darn good, or is it a matter that it's just one of those days and it happens, et cetera?
Well, you give them credit. Obviously, they've been very successful for a long period of time here. So at halftime, it was a 1-point game. This was our 4th game in 8 days. I think we ran out a little bit of gas in that third quarter. Credit to our team coming out ready to fight, and we didn't give up. There was no quit. There was no head down, but we're excited to have them again in a couple weeks.
Yeah, obviously this is a conference game, so we'll rematch it in a little bit. It gives us a chance to talk about this conference. Both teams came in undefeated on top of the conference, so it was a really nice battle for first place, and that gives us usually a good barometer of what's going on in the conference, especially this time of year. They beat you 65-54 in a bit of a low-scoring affair. Is this a team that you guys can beat and you guys can stay on top of the conference with, or is this the team that's going to be the class of the conference, as it were?
I absolutely think we can take them down. It's going to take every single person on our team buying into what we do, and really stepping outside their comfort zone and expanding their game. Every day in practice, we work on things that can improve us individually to help us improve as a team. And I think there's a lot of teams in this league kind of jockeying for position, kind of getting that for feel, and it's going to be a fun conference tournament for our league.
What do we make of this conference? Again, as we mentioned, Wisconsin Lutheran on top at 8-0. Concordia, Wisconsin's actually 8-1. Of course, that one loss being to you. You guys are sitting behind them at 7-1 as conference play gets going. We always have a little bit of an offset set of games that people have played. What do we make of this conference? This is usually a conference that gets one team in the NCAA tournament and then doesn't really make any waves. Is this a conference that can change that tide, though, in a very tough central region?
And I think it's definitely trending that way. Obviously, you saw the men's team from Benedictine last year take that jump and getting to the national championship game. Wisconsin Lutheran and Concordia, Wisconsin have won games in the NCAA tournament, and I think it's just taking that next step and getting us some good matchups, and hopefully shooting well that day.
You know how far this conference has come. You've basically been in it since the beginning. You played basketball at Edgewood, and then it was an assistant coach through the system as well, and now you're the women's coach over at Benedictine. How far has this conference come overall since you have both the men and the women's point of view?
I think it's grown dramatically. When it first started, like you said, it was a one-bid league, and it was a blowout league, for better lack of words. And it's a testament to the coaches, the universities, the athletic directors, investing in the programs, and, the student athletes, continue to work and continue to improve and continue to believe. You got to really believe when you go into any type of game that you can come out on top. And I think we're really doing that.
Let's talk about your team. Something you pointed out to me before we got going. There isn't a single senior on this squad. Usually that's if a team is playing this well at this point, you look at that and go, oh, they're going to be good for a while. You also look at this and you've got a fair share of juniors, but you also have a lot of players who are not juniors. Granted, next year's team is going to be very senior laden. Mm-hmm. What is the goal? Is the goal about success this season with a lack of senior squad, or the goal really the success you could build in 2, 3, and 4 seasons away?
I think it's really just to get better every single day. You never know when you're going to have any opportunity again. So you have to take advantage of every opportunity that is put in front of you. Obviously, we have 4 juniors playing this season really for us, and really only one of them got consistent minutes the previous 2 seasons. So it's coming into the season. They're juniors, but they're kind of going, they haven't played consistently since their high school season. So watching them mature in the last 3 months has been awesome, and they've really bought into what we do. Last season, we had some kids who played and who are not with us anymore, and so we had other kids, see that opportunity to step into a new role, and they've really flourished with it.
You talk about injuries, and if you look at the season box score, you can kind of see the testament of that. There's certainly a fair share of players who've played every single game, but then there's also players like Samantha McCarthy who played 9 games and started 6, and she's your 3rd leading scorer. You see another player like Peyton Sims, who's in the top 6 or 7 of scoring, 9 games and 3 starts. So you can kind of see where a little bit when you look at the season box score of how many players you've had to use and how many different starting lineups. What's the message to the team in that scenario? Because that can be both frustrating to a team because they don't feel any consistency, but at the same time can be very beneficial because a lot of players are getting experience they may not normally get.
And I think that's how we turn it. It's the biggest positive it can possibly be, because if you're practicing every day hard, wanting and thinking that you should be in that starting spot, well, the opportunities have arisen for us this year, and so you have to be ready for them. And if you don't come to work every single day ready to take on that opportunity, opportunities pass you by. And just like we talk about college athletics preparing them for the real world, that's the same thing when they get out of school. They have to be ready to take everything head on, and if you get down on yourself and you're not ready to go, well, someone else is going to take that opportunity.
Let's talk about the team. You're led by Deaza Williams, 13 games and 13 starts, 14.5 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, over an assist, almost assist and a half, roughly a game, 14 blocks, which is more than a block a game as well, and shooting 38% from the floor and 83% from the free throw line. She leads the way, but you got 3 players. And by the way, I should point out she's a sophomore. You got 2 other players in double figures, Vanetta Parsons and Samantha McCarthy, the aforementioned having been injured McCarthy, both with more than 11 points a game. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Elena Morrow, 8.6 points a game, but 10.1 rebounds a game, and all of them shoot pretty decently. That's a pretty good stock core there of 4 before you get to the rest.
Yeah, and talking about Deaza, unfortunately, she suffered the always horrible torn ACL her senior year of high school, which obviously coming back last year you saw glimpses, and you stayed on her, and this year she's really flourishing. She does a little bit of everything, has that inside outside ability, can shoot the 3, can handle the basketball, can play defense. So she's really growing into that role, and it's an exciting time to watch her grow. And the sky's really the limit with her. Vanetta Parsons has done a great job kind of buying into what we do, and she's really our leader. She really makes us go. She's had games where she's played 40 minutes for us. And, when we take her off the floor, it's kind of, as a coach, you kind of start shaking a little bit, like, how are we going to get the ball into our offense? How are we going to score that way? But she is just an unbelievable player. And, you talk about Elena Morrow, just does all the dirty work. Every single rebound, I have the most confidence in the world that she's about to go grab that. She doesn't stop hustling. I think the only negative we could say about her, she gets a little too down on herself sometimes, and we're working on that with her. But it's just getting that confidence up to make plays. And, you talk about, Peyton Sims, Benita Drain, Roxana Gaddis, coming off the bench, being able to score. That's a huge part when you have people that can score. And, Casey Williams and Georgia Alexakos are two of the better defenders in the conference. When they stay down, they're so long and athletic. We talk to them every single day. When you don't reach, you are hard to score on. And I think, we kind of have that full team package. We've had, I think 6 or 7 leading scorers this year. So it's fun to watch.
I was going to say, what don't we know about this team that we can't see in the box score and the streams? I can watch a game online and kind of get an idea of what a team is. Obviously, it's even better to see them in person if you can. I can look at a box score and can look at a game story and kind of get what's going on. Who are the contributors, or what's the mojo, as it were, of this team that I cannot get by doing those things?
First off, they're a fun group to be around. They keep you on your toes. They like to have a good time, but they also understand the ramifications and know when it's time to be serious. They know when it's time to focus. We do have a lot of different people who can step up in different ways, and I think the best part of a team is when other people are stepping up, the excitement you see on everyone else's faces. And that's really kind of know when you have a team. If they're not playing as well, they don't get down, but they're excited to see their team make it down. And that helps, their spirits get up. And we're working on continuing to build that team culture and family culture every single day.
So when I also look at the box score, I see that you're scoring 71.6 points a game, and I see that you're only giving up 59.9, a shade under 60 points a game. So is that a testament to the opponents you're playing, or is that a testament of the defense you are playing?
When we want to defend, we do a great job defending. At times we go through a couple lapses where we give up layups. We talk about, we live with contested jump shots. We'll be okay with that. If teams are going to make contested jump shots against us and beat us, we'll shake their hand at the end. But we don't want to give up the lane and give up free baskets pretty much on layups. Offensively, we want to get that game up in the high 60s, 70s. That's where we struggled a little bit yesterday. Had an 8-point third quarter where we kind of came out very flat. But we want to get that game up into the 60s and 70s because we have, the abundance of scorers who can do that for us.
Well, and that kind of gets me back to that North Central game. If you look at it beforehand, you were at Manchester on November 19th, and you beat them 69-66. And you look after the North Central game on the 26th of November, and you were home against Aurora in conference play and won 60-48. Of course, that North Central game was 97-89, as you had to basically throw everything out the window and play a system game. How hard is it to prepare for a game like that, and how hard is it to get out of sync from that and get back to normal?
Well, it was a little bit tougher this year, obviously. Scheduling that 4-game kind of 7 days really to start this was maybe a coaching error, but it was kind of nice this year. I think we were at Manchester over the weekend. We really only had 1 day to prepare, so they don't think about it then. It's just let's go out there and play basketball. Obviously, the tougher part is coming out of it. That was right before Thanksgiving. Obviously, we give them off Thanksgiving Day. They get to go and be with their families. And then we come back and play an Aurora team who runs their stuff so well. And slows the game down. So you just played a track meet. Now you have to play a slowdown game. So it made sense. We talked to them at halftime. We understand why we're struggling a little bit right here. But, it's a testament to them. And, especially that first part of the season, not a lot of them knew. It was new to a lot of them so we'll be okay.
So you're pretty much halfway through the season. 11-2 overall, 25-game schedule. Obviously, it's conference run the rest of the way. What's the message to the team as you've hit the midway point of, and you're 11-2, and obviously we multiply out your 22-4, which would be spectacular. But how do you keep them focused? What's the message to the team at this point in the season, and what should we expect in the second half?
And it's just that every game matters, right? That the Wisconsin Lutheran game, obviously everyone sees it on paper. It's hard. Both teams undefeated. You're going to look at that game. But matters the same in the standings as the game Wednesday against Concordia Chicago does. And it's just that next game. And we talked to them, you'll always look back on the great first half you had, but now it's time to move forward. Nothing that we did in that first half, we really need to look back on right now. It needs to continue to be growing and just moving forward mantra.
Well, it's certainly interesting to see how well you guys are off to. Like we said, 11-2 overall, certainly impressive, 7-1. We should point out, by the way, we pre-taped this interview reluctantly on my part. As you have to apparently attend the Green Bay Packers playoff game. As a Chicago Bears fan, I can't believe I'm allowing this to happen. In other words, allowing you to come on my show pre-taped versus going to the Green Bay game. I will say enjoy the Green Bay game, but I have no affinity whatsoever for how it turns out. I hope Green Bay loses.
Yeah, well, they're about to take down the Giants and make that run to the Super Bowl. But
Oh.
if you have Aaron Rodgers, you can do anything.
Yeah. What were you saying about halfway through the season?
We were ready to go. Relax, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It says relax. So
Yeah.
we relax and we'll be
It's amazing, Packers fans. I've been surrounded by them for a long time in my life. I can't figure them out.
a little delusional sometimes, but we're always about the green and gold.
Yeah. Well, I got that World Series, so I'll just sit on that.
That is true. 100 years. It took a while.
Hey, you know what? It's like a good wine.
Yeah.
You get to enjoy it more when it's not really. It was frustrating. Let's be honest.
You savor it.
Yeah, right. Well, congratulations. Seriously, 8-game winning streak. Unfortunately, came to an end against Wisconsin Lutheran, but obviously 11-2 is a tremendous start. You're having a pretty darn good season by these standards, and I certainly congratulate the team and congratulate you on that. As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those who may be tuning in?
I just want to thank everyone for all the support. Obviously, coming from Concordia University, Wisconsin, Coach Stacy Brenner-Jones does an amazing job up there. Wouldn't be where I am today without her and all of her support and teaching. And, it's like you talked about a little bit, the men's team at Benedictine has kind of showed us the way. I think it's great for our players to be able to see that last year. And you look at the success of other programs in the school, softball, one game away from the softball World Series. Baseball coach coming to Benedictine, who has been there before, been one win away from the College World Series. So it's an exciting time to be an Eagle, and we're excited to be there, and looking forward to the rest of the season.
Very good. Well, good luck, like I said, and we'll look forward to seeing how it does turn out in the second half.
Thank you. Go Eagles.
Go. At least you said Eagles. Charlie Avercamp joining us from Benedictine. They will again on Wednesday be home against Concordia Chicago. Then they take on Concordia of Wisconsin on Saturday, home and then away. Obviously, the whole second half of the season still yet to play. They're in pretty good shape though in the NACC. We'll see how it goes the rest of the way. When we come back, we still have the Hoopsville mailbag. Don't forget, email us hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Or and plenty more on the show. I mean, for that matter, you know how long this show can go. We have plenty more ahead. You're watching Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. From the WBCA and ABC studios. More Hoopsville after this.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
This is why we love sports. It's in the way they play, free from the pressures and all the money talk. Playing for simply the love of the game, where everyone has a shot at their definition of success on and off the field. This is what we love about sports, and what we can still love about college sports.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
We are calling you, all of you. We are calling all Division III schools to join our cause.
It's on us to start the change. It's on us to be the change. It's on us. It's on Division III. It's on all of us to stop sexual assault.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. We do want to apologize for our technical difficulties with the UW-Stevens Point Athletics Director segment. We will get that segment to you at the end of the show. We're basically going to try a different version of our video and hope that one works versus the one that we tried apparently that didn't work. Gotta love technology. Sometimes it works for you and sometimes it doesn't. But we will have that segment for you later. Again, talking to the athletics director, Brad Duckworth, about the investigation in the men's basketball program. We will see where that takes us. Don't forget the Hoopsville mailbag segment coming up later. Hoopsville@d3hoops.com is your email address. Hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Send us a question. If you happen to not be listening to this live, or you're listening to us on the podcast, or whatever the case may be, don't worry. Send your emails in anyway. We'll answer them on a future show. So we're going to jump out to the Atlantic and talk more women's basketball. Alex Lang is their head coach, and they've actually had a number of 20-win seasons. If you just may not have been paying attention to the fact, the Bulldogs actually have a pretty good team on their hands. They're 9-2 this season, 5-0 in what is a rather interesting CUNYAC this season. Their 2 losses are to Mary Washington, not too shabby. NYU, not shabby either. And those games were pretty close. One of them was, at least, but we'll talk to the head coach about that. So joining us this time, he is joining us on the Skype hotline, as we don't have his logo up, but we'll get that solved in a second. And actually, you had nothing right on that graphic, so we'll try this again. But joining us on the system, and we will talk to him here, is the head coach of Brooklyn, the women's basketball coach, and that is Alex Lang. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville. We'll get your picture up here so we can at least see you, and then I'll fix all my technical difficulties. Good to see you. It's going well. Of course, that didn't work either. But curiosity. This is a team that obviously has been playing well. You guys have had a history of success. What's been the secret, and what's going to help you guys break through to the next level?
Great question. We play really hard. I think that's been our biggest motivating factor throughout the years. That's kept our team, up above. Having, like you said, 5 straight 20-win seasons. And, this way we look like we're on our way to having another successful year. We play really hard defense. Defense has been the name of the game for us. We really have prided ourselves on holding other teams to tough shots. And really, we mix things up with some zone, some man, and some pressure. But throughout the years, we've really tried to give a lot of effort on the defensive end. And we play a fast-paced style of basketball as well, which can sometimes wear other teams down. And we put a lot of pressure in both our zone and our man. So we've really played, I think, a tremendous amount of defense. And for our conference, we're one of the deeper, bigger teams, and we, have really done a good job in terms of using our depth to our advantage. And last few years we've led our conference in rebounding as well. So whenever you can rebound the basketball, that helps. So.
Yeah, rebounding certainly key. Defense, as they say, certainly key as well. What's the challenge then? Because this is obviously, we talk about 21 seasons. You're 22-8 in 2012, 24-7 in the next year, 22-8, 22-7, 21-8 last year. But that's about the crux of what we hear from this team. And maybe it's the CUNYAC, and maybe it's Sage that was certainly good the last couple of years, and some other teams as well. What's been keeping you guys from maybe taking that next step?
Yeah, well, I'll just correct you for a second. It wasn't Sage. Sage is in the Skyline. But,
that's right. I apologize. Yeah.
No problem. We've been right at the top of our league. We've had some nice wins non-league as well over the last few years. We did knock off NYU a few years ago. We've beaten Stevens and some of the NCAC teams over the last few years. We've never quite gotten over the hump of winning our conference. We've lost 4 out of the last 5 seasons in the conference title game. 3 of those times were to Baruch when they had their really good teams. And then last year we lost in overtime to Lehman in a really hard-fought game. But I think, just answering your question, continuing to get over that threshold will be, basically, I think a matter of our disposition as a team and how we decide to mature throughout this year. I think we have all the talent in the world this year, and we really have a team that's, we have 7 seniors on the team and a very veteran crew and a very self-motivated crew. And I think that we're going to have a great season. Whether, we can go on and win the conference and be in the NCAA tournament is a matter of, how we play in February. Overall, as a program, I think we've kept moving in the positive direction, and we've continued to improve every year. I really see our program continuing that trend. One of the things that's helped us has really just been our recruiting. When I first took over at Brooklyn, the team was actually 0-26 the year prior to me getting there. And our first few seasons, we went 6 years. This is my 15th season. We went 6 years without getting to 500. And then the last 8 seasons, we've been over 500 every year. Our recruiting has improved, and I think our style of play that I mentioned earlier really helped us sort of turn the corner in competing with some of the tougher non-conference teams, and also Baruch, who was the top team in our conference for a number of years. We'd gotten a couple of wins over Baruch during those seasons that they were kind of winning our league every year, but we never could quite get them in the championship game. We were actually beating them twice at halftime in the championship game of our conference, but never really got over that hump. So I think some of it's mental with our team. I think, everybody who's on our team, even those who don't have the history that I have as a coach, know that we kind of struggle to get over that hump, and we're looking to do that in the future. We have won a couple of ECAC titles, which was nice for our program. It was the first 2 times in our program's history that we ever won the ECAC. Typically our conference doesn't get too into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
But we're hoping to possibly get in this year, either by winning our conference or maybe as a second team this year. So,
last 5.5 seasons, you guys are 120-40 overall, and you do mention Baruch. I want to bring up Baruch in a little bit. We'll come back to Baruch in a bit. But you talked about your out-of-conference schedule, and you guys do play some good out-of-conference teams. And you lost to NYU by 10. You lost to Mary Washington by a few more than that, by 22. But you've played some other teams tight, and you are, NYU 59-49 is not a bad result in the grand scheme of things. How has that team helped you those results, I should say, helped you this season?
Yeah, I definitely looking at it from the national perspective, and NYU is a very good team. I'm sure, most people would take your perspective. We really felt like we could have won that game, and if we would have started the game a lot better, I think we would have had a much better chance down the stretch. But definitely we like to play tough competition. Mary Washington was another very good team. We obviously didn't play that well in that game. It was our first game after our finals, which we take a long layoff after. And typically we don't necessarily play our best basketball in that first game back, but it was a good chance for us to play a nationally ranked team down in Florida. And we had a great experience at that Land of Magic tournament. So it was a great experience for our team. And I think it's going to toughen us up when it comes down to league play. As you mentioned, we played NYU very tough in that game, and I thought we played Mary Washington tough in the second half. We just kind of fell behind very early by a lot. Didn't really play our brand of basketball in the first quarter, and got too far in the hole. But yeah, we try to play some really tough non-league competition every season, and we had a nice win early in the season over Kane. And, we're playing Skidmore in a couple weeks. That'll be another nice challenge for us. I know they're playing well up at the top of their conference. So we're looking forward to it. And, right now we're undefeated in our conference, but our conference is pretty tough. We have some tough competition coming up with Staten Island and Baruch and Lehman and some of those teams. So we'll be up for some challenges.
Yeah, you guys are 5-0 in the conference, which is a half game up on Staten Island, full game up on Hunter and Baruch. 9-2 overall, which is one of the better records in the conference. You do have York and New York coming up, who is 1-12, 1-4, and then you'll take on Baruch, actually, aforementioned 5-7, 4-1. What this conference, by the way, some of this is looks like a one bid league. Obviously, we're midway through. Staten Island or Hunter could change that equation, but it's just you three with winning records at this point. What do you make of this conference, and do you feel the pressure that you got to win almost every night to make sure you're in position to take advantage of being, in the best position possible for the tournament, because you got to get in on the AQ? Does that make sense? Do you feel the pressure every night because you're eventually going to feel the pressure of the AQ at the end?
Yeah, we definitely do feel that pressure, but we put that pressure on ourselves as well. Our team is highly motivated to really have a great season this year. Last year we lost in the championship game, like I said, in overtime, and it was a tough loss. We had no seniors on the team last year, so the team really was highly motivated to be back this year, get another shot. I wanted to just, you pointed out that Lehman and Hunter and Staten Island were the only two teams with winning records, but Lehman and Baruch play some pretty tough non-league schedules, and I think those teams are pretty talented as well. So I just wanted to point that out everybody listen. I think at the end of the day, they both will be over 500 toward the end of the season. Del Rosario from Lehman is a really tough player. I know you guys have talked about her on D3 Hoops. She's someone who's really hard to deal with. So from our perspective, we definitely feel the pressure to win every night, and we'd like to, keep rolling. We've won 4 in a row right now, and like you said, we're 5-0 in the conference. So we're hoping, we can continue to go and win some games. As you mentioned, we've got York tomorrow, and then we've got Baruch Wednesday. Baruch always plays us real tough, and after that we've got Staten Island, which will be a big showdown. As they're like you said, only a half a game behind us in the standings. So.
What jumps out at me is you average 67 points a game and give up 50. By the way, one of the rare box scores this deep in a season that's an even number, 67.00 points per game and 50.00 defensively. Nice math there. Yeah. But nobody's in double figures. Now, you got a couple close, but nobody's in double figures. Olivia Colbert, 9.8 points a game. Alexandria Mugen, 9.8 points a game. Caitlin Richburg, 8.4, 7.9 each from Karen Mock and Taylor Gallagher. Yeah. You have a 9. I mean, Colbert's one away from a double-double. She's got 9.0 rebounds. Yeah. Is that because the team is – I mean, I look at that and I think, okay, maybe this team's pretty unselfish. Or I look at this and go, are they running a style of offense that everybody contribute? I mean, what do I look at when I see a box score and understand about your team here?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. We play a style where we do share the ball very, very much. We don't run a lot of plays that are designed, just to get one person the ball or to isolate one person. We really try to share the ball. I think our team is a little too unselfish at times. We've tried to get them out of that. Some of our players in particular, where they won't really be looking to score a lot of the time when they are in a position to score. So Olivia, like you pointed out, Ali Mugen, some of those players can be a little bit more selfish with the ball. Karen Mack, but I think it also just talks about our depth, because 2 of the players that you mentioned, Alexandra Mugen and Kaylin Richburg, who are 2nd and 3rd in our team in scoring, they both come off the bench for us. So, 4 of our starters aren't even in the top 3 in scoring on our team. So, Olivia is the only one of our starting lineup that's in the top 3 in scoring. So we have a number of different ways to score and to beat people. We try to play our 10, 11 people in our rotation anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. So nobody's really playing, 30, 35, 40 minutes a game. So, just with that fact of the number of minutes they're playing, it's hard for people to score, a ton of points, and especially due to the fact that we're sharing the ball. I think that some of those scoring averages may go up a little bit. We're getting a little more fluid with our offense and getting a little more chemistry in our offense now that we're into January. Sometimes early in the season it's a little tough to, just chemistry-wise, just in terms of running some offense and finding certain people. But I think that, some of those scoring averages may go up. It's funny, like game to game, a couple games ago, Allie and Olivia were both over 10 points, and the scoring averages are still pretty low for your leaders in terms of like 10.7 or 10.2. But now that we've had a couple of games where they were a little bit of routes, we didn't play them as many minutes, and they didn't put up really a lot of points, and now they're at like 9.9 or whatever it is you mentioned. Yeah. So nobody averaging 10 points a game. It's pretty weird for a team that's 9-2. But I think it's a good sign for us. We have a lot of different people that can score. So.
As you mentioned, you go about 10 deep. 10 players have played 10 or 11 games. If you go down to 8 or 9 games, you're down to 13 deep. As far as double digits in terms of average minutes, that's 12 deep. Of course, this team is 7 seniors on it. So not only are you willing to go deep onto your bench and get as many people into the game as possible, but you got 7 players who understand this is it in my career. That's got to add an interesting dynamic to everything.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's any coach will tell you it's nice having seniors because there's a little bit of sense of urgency. You can motivate them at times, by telling them, hey, this is your final chance, and this is really when you've got to get done. I think, even though we all have that realization, sometimes your seniors miss the boat on it a little bit still. I think young people in general, they they always think they're going to have more cracks at doing something. They don't quite get that this is, the end of their college career. But at the same time, we've got a really mature, responsible and self-motivated team that I think is really making the most out of their season so far, and really I think going to work hard down the stretch. I really enjoy this time too. For us, it's intersession right now. There's no classes going on. You can see like a big weight's been lifted off of some of their shoulders in terms of not having to worry about classes and finals and all those sort of things. So they can just concentrate on basketball a little bit and develop that chemistry that we talked about.
Obviously, York and New York coming up on Monday. You'll play Baruch later in the week. Then you'll hit the road, and you got a long stretch of games on the road. Staten Island, Hunter, Lehman, Purchase, and Medgar Evers. Granted, on the road for you guys is not necessarily like on the road for a MIAC team or a Southern team, so it's relatively at home. But still, you're going to have 5 in a row there without your home gym, without your home fans. How do you kind of get the team ready for that? Because that can grind on people.
Yeah, it definitely can. And our team, for anyone who's been to our gym, we have a nice little setup and I think a good home court advantage with our fans and our cheerleaders and the environment we have in our gym. So sometimes when we go out on the road, it really takes a lot to motivate the team, just because some of the other gyms we play in aren't quite as loud or aren't quite as comforting to our team. And so I think that our team will be motivated, but like you said, it's tough playing all of those consecutively. Just the way the schedule worked out this year, we've got a lot of home games consecutively and a lot of road games consecutively, and we're back at home to close out the season with a lot of home games. So, I think our team will be very motivated for those games, because a bunch of those conference games that you mentioned are some big ones for our season. We beat Hunter the first time we played them, but they're a good team this year. They're having a good season. Lehman, same thing. We beat them the first time we played them. However, we'll be going back to their gym. The Staten Island game, like you mentioned, that's a big showdown. A team we've matched up with over the last few years, had a pretty good rivalry. So, some of those games are going to be really, really intense, and I think our team will be pretty motivated. So, it's definitely tough going out on the road, but we're having a great season. I think we'll keep it going.
Before I let you go, I want to talk about Baruch. Baruch, at this point, is the first of the 3 cases that have caught the Division III attention in the last 6 months or so. Obviously, Baruch's case came out over the summer, so it didn't get as much attention. I can go into my opinion for the umpteenth time on it if we want, but that's not necessarily what I was asking you about. But you guys had to play this Baruch team who had a head coach who basically, along with a vice president, was finding ways to get players onto the team that shouldn't necessarily been, or at least got some advantages, or got to stay on the team through some advantages. They obviously worked that way, or used that to the tune of a couple conference championships and NCAA tournament berths. What's it like to be in the conference, having had to face that squad, probably with players who shouldn't have been there in the first place, and then to see what happened over the summer, and then on top of that, to see what's happened to Thomas More and what will happen possibly to Stevens Point?
Yeah, I've been following along, and obviously the Baruch incident was, big news locally and within our conference. Everybody obviously knew what was going on. It's disheartening from the conference point of view, because, the CUNYAC, we have some good athletics going on here. We don't have a lot of the funding that some of the bigger private school leagues and some of the private schools have. So we try to make the most of what we do have. And I know at Brooklyn we work extremely hard and we really try to do things the right way. And, it's a little bit of a black eye for the conference and obviously for women's basketball in general when something like that happens. Baruch had some great teams those years, and we faced them, 3 times in the conference championship game, and we lost all 3 times. So obviously it's a little frustrating when you hear that there was rules broken and that sort of thing. But as a coach, from a coach's perspective, you try to prepare your team, and from an opponent's perspective, we were preparing for the team that we were ready to play. We're obviously not getting caught up in, what was going on behind the scenes. It's unfortunate that some of those things occurred, and it's unfortunate, that people look at that era now and will say like, what if, and all those things. It's definitely unfortunate that it's happened at some other schools, especially, Thomas More won the national championship, that's definitely unfortunate that they have to deal with a situation like that, and that the rest of the country has to deal with a situation where, the championship is now compromised to some degree. It's from the CUNYAC's perspective and from Brooklyn College, I think that it seems as though whatever went on in the past, it looks like Baruch is trying their best to clean things up, and so we're looking forward to moving forward and competing against, them and the other schools in our league, obviously. I'm sure the student athletes that are involved have a little bit of a different perspective. From a coach and an administrator, I think it's obviously unfortunate that it happened, but at this point you have to move on and move forward. So,
quickly, in your opinion, should any of those players be considered ineligible, and thus should they have vacated those conference championships? I know it doesn't give you the crown. Yeah. It doesn't give you the opportunity to have gone to the NCAA tournament, but do you feel that maybe they had an advantage that just was a little too much?
Yeah, it's difficult for me to comment. I think that obviously we've seen instances in the past with similar situations where teams were forced to vacate conference championships. So I see where you're going with it, and I see the similarities, and I believe Baruch had a separate incident where they did have to, forfeit a conference championship and vacate wins. But it's not for me to say, obviously, and without knowing all the details and the NCAA made a decision, and obviously, there was some punishments that were handed down, and they can't compete in the conference championship this year, which is a pretty big punishment. So, I think at this point, you just have to, understand what happened, and for us as college basketball coaches and administrators, try not to let things like that happen in the future, because it tarnishes all the hard work that we put in. And what this is really supposed to be about, which isn't about, punishing people and that sort of thing. It's really supposed to be about letting people, go to school and get a degree, and also shine on the court.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your perspective. The first chance we had a CUNYAC team on to discuss it, so I appreciate getting your point of view, especially considering you played them, as you said, 3 times in the conference championship game. You got to know that team just a little bit.
Yeah, we know them pretty well.
Yeah. Well, Coach, appreciate you taking the time to join us. As always, we give the coach the final word.
Okay.
Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Hey, I look forward to meeting some of you coaches down the road, and hopefully we'll be in the tournament this year, and we'll get a chance to play some high-level basketball. We're looking forward to it.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing how the team does the rest of the way too, Coach. Good luck.
Great, thank you.
Alex Lang joining us from the Skype line, thanks to the city of Salem. Again, they play Monday against York of New York, then they'll take on Baruch. Those are 2 home games before a stretch of 5 on the road. Then they'll finish the season 5 of 7 at home, so they'll try and take advantage of the road and home schedule the rest of the way. 9-2 overall, 5-0 in conference play. When we come back, we'll go to the WBCA Center Court. Christy Thomascutty from Emory will join us. You'll listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. More Hoopsville right after this.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
It starts right when you hit the court. You imagine your finest moment. The game-winning shot that gets you to the dance. A monster dunk or no-look pass, and cutting down the net. Sports lets us dream of our own success and prepare us for our finest moments on and off the court.
I'm a current Division III student athlete, and I remember how intimidating the first year of college can be.
So if you're a first-year student athlete and nervous about coming out as LGBTQ, I pledge to stand by your side as your ally.
If you can play Division III.
We are Division III student athletes, and you can be too. If you can play in Division III.
I did receive a non-athletic scholarship upon entering school.
I got the presidential scholarship, which was huge for me.
I think there's more opportunities for academic scholarships in Division III.
I did receive academic scholarships. Just being involved on campus, being a leader, all those things combined kind of get me recognized. It's a great experience for me.
We hope you enjoy the show. Now back to Dave with the WBCA Center Court.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show on this Sunday evening. If you've got questions for us, email us, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. We'll include those questions, if we can, in our mailbag segment coming up here shortly. Also, don't forget, you can tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Join us on Facebook, I should say, facebook.com/Hoopsville, where, of course, we are streaming the show live tonight. And you can also join us on Instagram at D3Hoopsville there, though we don't tend to follow the show as much on that locale. You can certainly use that to stay in touch, find out who guests are, and when we hit the road and travel, find out where we're headed. You can do that through Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Of course, email is, as always, as we mentioned at the beginning, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Of course, we always say that Hoopsville presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. You may notice I'm wearing my WBCA polo today. Well, that's because for the first time this season, we are breaking out the WBCA Center Court, a segment we brought to you first last year. We'll be bringing the NABC Coaches Corner coming up on Thursday for the first time this season as well. WBCA and NABC have been great partners with us, the WBCA, for the last 2 seasons. And as a result, it gives us an opportunity to talk to coaches, not only for what they're doing with their team, certainly, but also what they do off the court or ways that they give back, especially to an organization like the Women's Basketball Coaches Association. One person in particular who gives back to the WBCA and has certainly been an integral part of the WBCA and really Center Court as well, and of course our segments here on the show, that would be Christy Thomascutty, the head coach for Emory, and she joins us on the City of Salem hotline. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being the inaugural guest of the WBCA Center Court for this season. We'll break it in with you, as it were. First and foremost, we should say we are pre-taping this segment as you have had the unfortunate, maybe fortunate opportunity of being stranded in an airport thanks to the weather up and down the East Coast.
Without a doubt. Played at Rochester yesterday, got on a bus to travel over to Buffalo on what we thought was a flight home through Charlotte, and waited 6 hours before they told us with maintenance issues we couldn't fly out. So we have been in a lovely hotel across from the airport for the last 8 hours.
Yeah, nothing says mid-season basketball like spending a full day in the Buffalo area and doing nothing. You got to love it. And, of course, you live in an area that can get kind of crazy with weather, and Charlotte's not that much different. So this is kind of par with the course sometimes for you guys.
You know, we've been really blessed because usually we fly Delta direct, and so we don't. This isn't the first time in my tenure at Emory that we've had a delay like this. And you know, I kept saying last night to our kids, we're just really blessed. One, that we're not sleeping in an airport, and two, we're not missing class. And that within the UAA, it was just a single game weekend for us as well, so we're not missing anything big picture. But I think we're all craving the comforts of home right now.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, you're right. It is only a single game. It's not like you're hop skipping around through Chicago and St. Louis or New York and Boston or Cleveland and Pittsburgh. So certainly this is a little bit of an advantage. If there was ever a time to have it happen, it's this one. But you guys have to be ready for anything in UAA travel. You really do. As we mentioned, the cities that you may have to go to, you have to be prepared for one of these scenarios to crop up its head in January and February.
Yeah, like I said, this is the first time in my tenure, and I think we're going 14 years at Emory, that I've ever had a delay like this.
That's amazing.
And we've been really blessed. I mean, I think the good news is for us, a lot of times it's just getting out of Atlanta because we're not equipped to deal with the bad weather. You know, up here in whether we're in Rochester or Buffalo, I know it could be a blizzard out. We're still going to get out because they're used to it.
Yeah.
So again, it's a great lesson for our young people because you learn very quickly you can only control what you can control. And weather and flight delays are not one of them.
Obviously, you had to get things underway at Rochester to start it, which means Rochester will be coming to you. But, of course, you have WashU and Chicago next weekend. So, if anything, you are going through the gauntlet of the UAA schedule to start the season. You know, WashU team that was ranked number 5, but lost to Chicago yesterday, and a Rochester team ranked 22 who you lost to. This is a heck of a way to start UAA season.
It's never fun. It's just started plain and simple. You know, everyone's like Happy New Year, and I think for every coach in the UAA, you kind of say yes, but you know what's coming.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously, starting on the road at Rochester, a really good, well-coached team with an All-American and Alex Leslie. You know, it's ready or not, so to speak. And I thought we battled, but I thought, you know, Alex Leslie made some incredible plays down the stretch and did what an All-American like she is did for her team. And you know, unfortunately, they came out with a win.
Obviously, you'll be home against WashU in Chicago, then back on the road up in Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and then back home against Brandeis and NYU, then on the road to New York and Boston. It's an interesting UAA schedule every year. How do you guys prepare for this? I mean, because do you do anything during the regular season to kind of gear up, especially for the underclassmen who maybe haven't gone through this, or is it more a baptism by fire?
I think it's really baptism by fire, because no matter how much you travel, how much you play a tough schedule, or who you play, there's just nothing like it. You know, every game, you know, what you've been able to get away with is taken away. And I think that's really hard for young players to adjust. You know, I think it's hard for every young player as well to start balancing the true demands of their academics with the travel and the intensity of play. And so, you know, I think the most gifted teams in our league are always probably the more veteran-led teams, and who have freshmen that, you know, either hit the wall a little bit early and recover quickly, or, you know, they're blessed and it doesn't really affect them as much as it might some other young players. But I think that's what makes this league so exciting.
Obviously, the UAA is deep, especially on top. As we mentioned, Chicago and WashU and Rochester, all ranked or nearly ranked. Chicago certainly will get some attention after their win yesterday. You guys have been in the conversation, as you and I have talked about in the past, quite often as bit, but you can't overlook. I haven't even mentioned NYU, by the way, who's been ranked. You know, who's also very good. So this makes it already 5 deep, and we haven't gotten to Brandeis, Case Western, and Carnegie Mellon, who's having a tremendous season, building off a tremendous season last year. There's just no rest for the wicked.
No, and then, you know, you talk about Carnegie Mellon with their All-American post player, and Lisa Murphy, and they were beat yesterday by Case Western, who's, you know, I mean, they're getting kids who are averaging 30 points a night. And so, you know, Jim Scheibel, the head coach of Rochester, and I were talking about last night, you know, we've always talked about how anyone can beat anyone on a given night, but I think we really believe this year, like, we really don't know who can win this league. I think it is that wide open, and I think the error of margin between every team is just so slight this year.
The Chicago's record overall is 8-4. That's the worst overall record in the UAA. 8-4 for them.
And that was a crazy schedule she had as well.
Yes, she did. She did not
really tough.
Talk about no rest for the wicked. 9-3 for 3 teams. NYU is 9-2, 10-1 for WashU, 10-2 for Rochester, 11-1 for Carnegie Mellon. Obviously, multiple bids could come out of this conference, but at the same time, there's going to be some really tough, really good teams that may be left kind of sitting outside when it comes to March.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I think that's the good news, bad news about our league every year. Unfortunately, I think we go into it and we beat one another up. I think the good news, or the silver lining in that, is that I think the teams that advance are so tournament ready to compete and to excel. And, you know, I think a testament to Wash and Rochester is just the continuity that they bring year in and year out, and how they're able to achieve at such a high level and advance well into the tournament.
You have a 3-senior squad, a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores, no juniors. So this is an interesting dichotomy here. You've got 3 upperclassmen who are basically teaching the ropes to everybody else on how you get through all of this. Of course, you're led, though, by a sophomore in Ashley Oldshoe at 16.5 points a game, 7.8 rebounds a game. Shelley, is it Canute? Canute. Ah, very nice. You just forget the I. Canute, 13.1 points a game and 2.7. And Canute is that senior. So, you know, what is the balance for your team with those 3 seniors and then pretty much all underclassmen?
You know, I think our seniors done a great job just trying to lead by example. I think they've taken lessons that they've learned throughout their, 3 previous years, and have really tried to use those to teach our young freshmen. I think at the same time, we've also really believed that the naivety of our freshmen is bliss, and we haven't wanted them to get overwhelmed. You know, I thought one of the issues during game yesterday is our freshmen wanted it so badly, and we just came out like gangbusters, and then you just felt like they couldn't catch their second wind. And so, again, another lesson that we learned yesterday. And I think that's one thing that as we go through this, our seniors, our staff, like we sense a new lesson that we learn every day with our young people. And it's just, apply it and let's move forward. Apply it and let's move forward.
Of your 13 players on the listed roster, 11 are from different states. You have 11 different states represented. So not only do you have, a dichotomy that comes in general, but a lot of schools, may have a lot of commonality, maybe a lot of states, so players may know each other or have played with each other or against each other. You literally bring people from all over the country in who have never played with one another. What's it like to get that chemistry going?
I think we're blessed in that we're such a national institution, that Emory is, as well as an international institution for that matter. I think our kids love it, honestly. I think they love the fact that, their best friend on the team is from the other side of the country.
Yeah.
But, I think Division III and just the way the makeup of our rules, that we have that time. They have that time in the preseason to really start bonding and gelling. But there's nothing like just getting on the court together. And, in this day and age, they're all playing AAU, and those teams switch up every year. And, unfortunately for some of them, even they do cross states and whatnot. So, I don't know that we've ever made a lot of it. I think it's what Emory is, very national in scope. And so it's just what we do. But I know that I love the fact that I represent a national institution. And I think our kids like that, too, that, it's not just a regional base. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to have more Georgia kids on my roster. But at the same time, it's nice when we're traveling throughout the UAA because it's usually someone's hometown that we're going to.
Yeah, that's certainly an advantage, and obviously a much wider scope for the UAA. I'm curious, though. We've talked over the years. Your program seems to have kind of gone through the roller coasters, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously we're not that far away from 2013 when you finished 24-4. You were bracketed on either side by 16 and 18 game winning streaks. The last 2 years hovered right at 500 at 13-12 and 12-13. This year, you're 9-3. What direction are you hoping to establish, especially with so many underclassmen?
I think with this group especially, what we talked about is just the next possession. I think in our losses, our youth has crept up, and we got to live and die with that because we do have so many young players that we're playing significant minutes. And so, I've never wanted to focus on even the 24-4 year. We never focused on winning. It was, are we reaching our potential? Are we playing that next possession? And so, I'm very optimistic about this crew. I like how we're developing. Even when I sit back and I look at our practice on December 26th and I look at where we are today, I've seen the improvement in our players. And as long as we're doing that, I know that this season's going to be pretty special for us.
The season includes a loss to Maryville, 85-68, a loss to Piedmont, 70-67, and obviously Rochester's loss. What do you take from those losses or wins over Johns Hopkins or wins over Sewanee or Mary Baldwin? I'm basically trying to find mixes of teams in that group. What do you take from those losses and wins, and what can you use looking forward as you stare down WashU and Chicago ahead next weekend?
I think the one thing that I really like about our non-conference schedule is that we played a lot of different styles.
Yeah, you did.
And even as we, I should say we had to defend a lot of different styles. And so even when we went into Rochester, it was really somewhat easier because I was like, this is just the way this is like what Piedmont did. Obviously a much better low post player and Alex Leslie, but they're going to run the same kind of 4-out motion offense. Again, Wash is a beast because, in all my years, even from Division I, no one's been able to run just that continuity offense the way Wash does. And so I would be lying to you if I said we've had an opponent that's prepared us for Wash. But I think the one thing we take, I even like the way my team responded after the Piedmont loss to Rhodes, is they finally started realizing we got to play better defense. We have to, all 5 players play together because we didn't value the possessions. And so, whether it's been a win or a loss, we've been able to take different things from each game. And, to be completely honest, I don't know that we'll really know how well we applied that lesson until we get into live action this weekend, especially against 2 really quality opponents.
I was going to ask you, 78 points a game, you're scoring 55 points a game, you're defending or allowing. Of course, some of that 55 points is a little bit deceiving when you're playing Trinity at DC or you're playing Mary Baldwin or Huntington, who certainly struggle. So is this a defensive team? Is this a team that is priding itself or focusing itself on defense, or are you trying to be more of an offensive team that just happens to have had a few low-scoring affairs?
It's a great question because it's one of the questions I've asked my team, what's our identity, when someone shows up. And, we want to be that defensive-minded team, but I think, honestly, right now, we're much more of a transition team. We're trying to get it out. We're trying to increase our offensive possessions. You know, the great thing about Ashley Olchu, and this is the amazing thing for a 6'2" post player, she's getting a lot of her touches are coming out of transition. She's just sprinting the floor that hard. She's special in that way. And so, you know, we know that as long as we can make a team have to defend this 94-40, we've got a great shot every night.
Talking to Christy Thomascutty, the head coach for Emory women's basketball team. The team is off to a 9-3 start. And by the way, I've just noticed through all our graphics, and we will fix them as they loop back through, that we apparently spelled Thomascutty with a C and not with a K. And I will fix that immediately as we're talking with head coach. Coach, this is part of the WBCA segment, as we mentioned at the beginning, and so thus it raises the stuff I want to talk about, what you're doing off the court. You've been a major member of the WBCA for a number of years. What is it so important to you, and we can talk about a little bit about what you do in a minute, but why has it been so important to you to give back to WBCA or being part of the Women's Basketball Coaches Association to the extent that you have been?
I know I was very blessed to work for a young lady by the name of Jill Hutchison when I first got into the coaching profession, who I think is a 3-time WBCA president. And so from, you know, my second year as my second year as an assistant coach at Illinois State, you know, that's all Jill did was give back and put the game of basketball before our own program because she believed in what this game would do for young people. And so that has always been ingrained in me since I was a young coach. And as I got older, you know, fortunately, I've been able to give back. You know, this is such a great game. I know what it has done for me as a woman, and I just want to make sure that this game continues to grow and that this game continues to get the exposure it deserves and that our young women get the exposure that they deserve. And, you know, I think organizations like the WBCA do such a great job of making sure that this game is about our young people, and that's what I truly love about it.
You're part of kind of I call it the three-headed monster of Division III, and I mean that in a very joking way. You've got three very different people in Mary Beth Spurk from Moravian and Pat Williams from Williams, interesting enough, and yourself, obviously, out of Emory. They're kind of the core trio, but there's obviously a lot who give outside of that. You're on the executive committee. You're technically, your title is Division III Division III legislative chair, which opens up a hornet's nest of questions, but we'll try and keep them short. What exactly, though, are you responsible for, or are you leading in that role?
Well, I think as a legislative position, I'm just kind of that voice for our Division III coaches with the WBCA, but also with the NCAA, because there's a lot of communication that goes both ways. And, you know, usually when proposals are going forward, we're going to have those discussions amongst our conference captains, which is a representative of each conference in the country from Division III, and I take that feedback and I give it to, you know, our executive director and Danielle Donahue, who communicates with the NCAA, and we usually make sure that dialogue, that coaches' voices are being heard. You know, through the executive committee, we restructured our board a couple years ago just to have fewer numbers, honestly, and it was a big push by Mary Beth and Pat and myself because we wanted to make sure that Division III was having a greater voice and not being lost with so many coaches on the board. And you know, I'm very blessed that they asked me to serve on the executive committee. And so I'm the only non-Division I representative on that executive committee. And so I feel like I need to have a voice for Division II, Division III, high school, and, you know, all the other groups to make sure that, you know, we're being heard. And more than that, that our young players are being represented in the way that they deserve.
The interesting point there is making sure Division III's got a voice, and I've always sensed over the years that it was kind of almost forgotten about at the WBCA, but in the last few years that has changed dramatically, and Danielle Donahue obviously coming in is one of the reasons I've heard that, but it also seems like you as a group at Division III have said enough. We do want to be heard, and you've made a point of doing that. How much has changed in the last couple of years?
I think without a doubt, a lot. You know, just being on the legislative committee, you know, I'm in these meetings with Muffet McGraw, and it's really humbling when Muffet will say, well, Christy, how would this rule proposal affect Division III? And that right there, I think, is the biggest difference that I see in recent years, because I think before it was very much NCAA, I mean, it was Division I driven, and it was just kind of the afterthought. And I don't believe that way anymore, and I don't want to speak for Division II, But I know that Mary Beth and Pat and I have all believe that, Division I's just not going to force something through because it's best for them if it's not good for Division III at all. And so that's where I feel really strong about what we've been able to accomplish in the last couple of years. And without a doubt, Danielle and her staff have been phenomenal in making sure that every division has a voice and that we are looking first and foremost to grow the game and make sure that we're putting the best product of basketball on the court at all times and that we're representing our coaches and giving them what they need.
So what are the biggest challenges ahead for either the WBCA or the Division III side or coaches in Division III when it comes to the future?
I think it's without a doubt, we're losing viewership. We need to pack the stands, whether it's a championship, whether it is a game on TV. We don't want to see a women's game and there's only 100 people in the stands. And so that's why a lot of attention right now is how are we going about doing things? When are we going to have the tournament? I think one of the greatest things for Division III was the joint championship a year ago in Indianapolis where, again, our athletes got center stage and played before a full, major, a packed major arena. And what an amazing opportunity for them. And so, it's one of those things that we keep talking about now. How do we do that again? How do we make sure that that's the product that everyone is seeing, not just, a smaller community is seeing? And so, at the same time, I think we've got to continue to develop young coaches. We're getting to that point now where everybody wants to coach. We've got a lot of young coaches in the profession, but what are we coaching? This game has evolved so much more than it's not X's and O's as the primary piece to be a great coach. It's so much more about the student-athlete welfare and what are we doing. And so I think the WBCA is definitely, trying to be in front of all that, whether it's the coach-to-coach mentoring program, in which I think we have over 400 participants right now. But we're trying to make sure that we're not just bringing coaches into the profession. We want to maintain and grow those coaches.
Wrapping things up here with Christy Thomascutty, head coach for the Emory women's basketball team, member of the WBCA executive committee, as we mentioned, and doing a lot of work, obviously, with that. One quick question about that, coach, is I've heard quite a few people kind of say it on record, and some just have conversations with me off, is that, having a championship like Salem for the men, meaning a site that we know is our destination, that's a little bit more consistent than every year or 2 years, would be kind of something that maybe women's basketball needs, wants, likes. Is that the case from your point of view? Is this something that maybe women's basketball would like to find? Is somebody, doesn't have to be Salem, just somebody out there who can be more of a destination and more of a central home for the Division III championships?
Yeah, I can say there's definitely conversations about that right now. Personal opinion is, as someone who follows softball College World Series, I think it's the greatest thing when you can get a community behind the event, just like Salem. And so would I love to see that? Without a doubt. To where, again, I think it's great for young basketball players, groups of young women, young girls who grow up going to this national event so that they love the game, they love the sport as much as the rest of us do.
And furthermore, I know the All-Star, or the Constellation Games were moved. Is there a strong move to try and make an All-Star game out of it?
There is. I think where we're struggling is the men obviously have the Reese's sponsorship, and that's what we need to find. We need to find someone who wants to sponsor that. But as long as I've been a head coach, I know that that's one thing Division III coaches have wanted. We wanted that All-Star game just like our men have.
Appreciate you taking the time. Before we let you go, as part of the Center Court, we do ask a few questions. They're always the same to every coach, so we can always have fun comparing. If anyone dares, goes and listens to every single one of these and compares. So if you don't mind, can we have a little fun with you?
Go ahead.
These are rapid fire. You don't have to overthink them. Just come up with whatever you think is a good answer to it. So the first one would be, obviously you're a former Division I player, and we should have mentioned, if anyone noticed on the graphic below, you're still 5th all time in 3-point field goals in the NCAA. You had a pretty good career at Tulane, Coach. What's your favorite thing about coaching, though, especially at Division III?
I love the student athletes. These young ladies keep you on your toes every day. We're in a hotel right now, stranded in the middle of a snowstorm, and it's constant questions. It's constant about the next thing. And so, they're brilliant young women, and they're going to be future leaders of our country, and that's inspiring each and every day.
And this might come out of the airport from this conversation, but what's your biggest pet peeve?
Is that I don't think the Division III athletes get the respect that they deserve. These young women are going above and beyond, and the intensity and the level of play, I think people just think it's they pretty much varsity high school. And without a doubt, I challenge people to come and watch Division III basketball, and I think they'll be truly amazed at the high level of play and just the class and the way that our young people are playing this game.
That's a great answer. I love that one. What's your favorite rule or nuance of the game?
I love the under 1 minute advance the ball rule.
Really?
I think it is I really do. Here's why.
Oh.
I've always been a big believer because of women and overall strength. A second or 2 seconds left to go in a ball game, it's pretty much a Hail Mary opportunity. And I think as a coach, it's had to make coaches be better. I think you see where you have to be prepared. I think it's added a new element of how do you manage timeouts throughout the game. I just think it's made it more exciting. Now, I will say as a fan, it has made the games much longer. So I can answer that at both sides of my mouth. So I know a lot of fans don't like it. And when I watch a game, I don't really like it. But as a coach, I love the strategy that goes into that.
You and I will have to have a conversation about that sometime, because actually I think the new rules have allowed the game to be quicker, and I'm very much a fan of that, and I think it works, and I think the men will take advantage of it. But you and I will talk about the reasons I don't like the 28-foot rule. But we don't have time. Per that, though, is there a rule you would want added, removed, or changed?
And this is the competitor in me, I don't like the 2-shot foul at 5 fouls.
Really?
I would love to be able to me, I think and this comes back to the game and us improving. Why are free throw, I don't want to reward a bad free throw shooter. And I would, years ago when we dropped, or when we went to the 2-shot foul, the premise behind it was to minimize fouls. Well, it's never going to minimize fouls. The team has to foul because they're behind, they're going to foul. And so I just think it's, in some ways it's helped poor free throw shooters. And, again, as a former shooter, as a coach now, I do believe players should be able to make free throws and layups.
That's interesting. I will say I like it being broken up into quarters. It allows us to stop making trips to the free throw line for the entire game. But I see that's an interesting point. Any pregame ritual or superstition?
I pray every day. I pray during the national anthem every day. I have ever since I was in junior high.
Very nice. That's a long-term one. Now, this one may be already answered by how we started our conversation, but what's the craziest travel experience?
Let's see, January 7th through, I'm praying the 8th of 2017 from Rochester to Buffalo at this point.
Yeah,
we're really hoping and fingers crossed that it ends in Atlanta tonight.
That was pretty easy. How would your assistants describe you as a coach?
That's going to be really hard for me to answer because I've got 2 former players as assistants right now.
Well, if I were to ask them, though, what would they say?
I really hope that they do believe that the mentoring piece I take very seriously with them and that I want to develop them into head coaches. But I also think that they would make fun of me to no end if you asked them that question. So they have made me tougher because all they do is mock me. So.
Wow. Interesting. All right. They're still employed. That's fascinating. What do you tell a recruit that gets them excited or gets them to commit to you?
I honestly tell them, I represent one of the greatest institutions in the country, and I'm not into a sell job. I'm in a buy job. Are you worthy of my players? Are you worthy of our program? Are you worthy of this institution? And, I believe that every coach has their own plus and minuses of where they're at. But I truly believe in what I represent in my institution. And, I feel like I'm very blessed to coach the young women that I do.
And when you retire, what do you hope people will remember you as a coach?
Wow. I hope that, that I coached with a class act, that I had classy players, and that we did it the right way, but that we played our butts off.
Well done. The segment went a little long, but it was so fun chatting with you, Coach. Thank you so much. I know we've now killed some time on your wait for the airline, so maybe it was good for you. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for joining us for the inaugural WBCA Center Court for this season. As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Dave, I appreciate all that you do to promote our young men and women through Hoopsville and D3 Hoops, and I think we're in for another great season of basketball. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Thank you, Coach. Safe travels home. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
All right. Christy Thomascutty joining us from Emory. Again, the Eagles, a tough loss to Rochester yesterday, but they're 9-3 overall. It's going to be a fascinating UAA season to watch. I want to thank the WBCA as well, and once again for the segment. Also, those videos you saw at the beginning, the video to introduce the segment, they efforted those. We really appreciate that. That's a great little new twist to the show. At the same time, a promo on the Hoopsville Marathon show, which will come up in a couple weeks. We'll hear from the executive of the WBCA, Danielle Donahue, will join us here on the show. We're going to be back. When we come back, we'll talk more basketball, obviously, on Hoopsville. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com for the WBCA NABC studios. More Hoopsville after this.
My name is Marcus Walker. I was All-State, won a state championship, a high school All-American, and played college and pro ball. I played because I love the game. I grind to be the best. I sweat because I put in work. I'm strong because I believe. When I want to bring it before game time, I come to the house that college basketball built, the CBE. No matter your skill, take it to another level. Elevate your game right here at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center.
This is our It's On Us pledge. It's on us to make a personal commitment to help keep all people safe from sexual assault, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, or ability.
Not to be bystanders to the problem, but to be leaders of the solution. We invite you to join us in this campaign by informing your campuses about the It's On Us mission.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
Cheer for the stumbles. The he shoulda had that's. And the tears that linger. For in those moments, greatness lies. There, you will find the provoked, the determined, the unified. It's in those moments that champions are born.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying this Sunday evening show. Now that we're back into the new year, obviously lots to talk about. We will be on the air every Thursday and Sunday for the most part, from now to the end of the basketball season. If you got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@D3Hoops.com. You can also join us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Don't forget the Hoopsville Mailbag segment coming up next block. If you want to get in a last-second question, you can certainly try. Email us, hoopsville@D3Hoops.com. If you're listening to us on the podcast or on demand and you're missing the mailbag segment, don't worry about that. Send your emails in anyway. We will feature you on a later show. That's how the Hoopsville mailbag segment works, and we hope you'll take advantage of that new segment here on the show. Obviously, we're running a little bit late tonight. No surprise, but lots to talk about. So we're going to get going here with our next guest. Switch back into some men's basketball here. One of the teams in the Northeast that has certainly gotten plenty of attention, or at least gotten a lot of talk this season, has been Endicott. Coming off of last year's NCAA tournament where they had a great game against Worcester in the second round down at Catholic, a game they nearly won themselves. The Gulls have certainly had some attention, even gotten into the top 25 for the very first time in program history earlier. A couple bumps in the road, though, have had the Gulls on and off people's radars. They're not been off ours, though, and we want to figure out what's going on in the Northeast, as it's one of our segments on a Sunday evening. So we head up to the Triple C Conference and talk to Kevin Betancourt out of Endicott. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville, and appreciate you taking the time.
No, I appreciate being on.
Appreciate it. And should mention Coach Betancourt, obviously, on the City of Salem hotline. 10-3 overall, 5-1. Obviously, especially by the standards of Endicott, this is a tremendously good season, though I would argue, and you can agree or disagree, that probably some people are a little disappointed. I think there was a lot of hype going into the Gulls this season. I think a lot of people thought, why not? Why can't you be undefeated or with one loss right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough when you come with some high expectations. I think it's something I've tried to address with our team, but, you got to take it one game at a time. It's college basketball, and once you get into conference play and everybody knows each other so well, you got to bring it every day. And, those are some lessons we got to learn. And as much as it's difficult to take some losses, I think what we learned from last year which was a similar January. We went into our conference tournament at 12-6, but we kept pressing on to try and get better and improve and play our best basketball at the end of the season, which I think we did. And we're trying to keep a similar mentality this year. But that's the nature of college basketball. We're going to have some ups and downs, and you try not to think too much of our record. I'm trying to look more at how we're playing, and I thought ever since we came back from the holiday break, we've kind of been struggling a little bit. So I think a loss like we had recently to Western New England on the road, hopefully will get our attention that we need to address some things.
Obviously, I mean, this is a team that had a couple good seasons recently. It's not that far ago. 2 seasons ago, you were 23-6 on the year. Unfortunately, lost in the first round to Stockton, which probably made a lot of people think maybe it was a little overrated. 19-11 last year. You had a heck of a finish to the season and wound up in the second round against Worcester. This program has been building under your tutelage quite a bit, and that's probably raised those expectations a little bit to this year, has it not?
Yeah, it has. And obviously having prior success the last 2 seasons, like you mentioned, and having, 6 seniors back who have been part of the core going forward has made it, have some great expectations this season. But, like I said, you just got to try to put that stuff aside. We appreciate all the attention. It's been great. And, hopefully we can just keep building towards trying to play our best basketball at the end of the year.
You talk about that loss last night to Western New England, Saturday night, 74-70, certainly a thriller of a game on the road. Of course, Western New England has been a darn good team in this conference for a while, up and down themselves, but certainly in the conversation. And you said you guys have been struggling a little bit. You barely beat Gordon by 1. You beat Wentworth by 9 prior to that. How is this a good wake-up call, maybe?
Well, that's probably to be determined, to see how we come back tomorrow at practice and then moving forward into the week as we get ready for Salve Regina and then Nichols in the weekend. But Western New England, they're a good program. They're very well coached. I have nothing but respect for them, Coach Tab. But, a lot of freshmen, a lot of youth on that team. So part of the record is what it is. But, our guys just didn't have it yesterday. I thought a little bit of conditioning has been an issue since we've come back from the holidays. I think, we played 5 games in 9 days, and I don't know if our guys totally were prepared for that. I think it caught up to us a little bit yesterday. Lack of energy and focus on our end, but that a lot of that had to do with Western New England. They really played well yesterday, brought a ton of intensity to the game, and I think they caught our guys a little bit. We struggled, and we certainly didn't make shots to the degree that we are capable of. So, hopefully we can bounce back here and kind of get refocused, and we got certainly some tough games coming up in the conference as we move forward.
So if I'm reading this correct, you said there was too many Christmas cookies is what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, potentially. I don't know. It's also just maybe losing that rhythm. We had some pretty good rhythm in that first semester. That's part of it. Last year we came back and, dropped 2 right away and then ended up beating Middlebury. You just never know. We've only really had 2 or 3 true practices. That's probably poor scheduling on my part, but, the conference puts the 3-game week right away, and we needed to hop in a holiday tournament to kind of get the rust off. And, I thought we probably had the depth to handle that, but, we'll still take where we're at with things as long as we continue to recognize we need to get better.
This team has got, I believe, 6 seniors on it, obviously senior-laden. Obviously, as you kind of indicated, the core group of seniors who had come back, probably a reason a lot of people thought that they would play well this season and have a really good season. No surprise there. Of course, you're led by 3 seniors, those ones we mentioned, Kamal Walker, Max Matroni, and Daquan Sampson. 18.2 points a game for Walker, Matroni at 15 points a game, Sampson 11.5. And, of course, they're that core group of rebounders for you as well, with Sampson leading the way at 6.6. Walker, 2.5 assists a game, and Matroni, 3 assists a game. Obviously, it's that core group, but all good teams have more than just a core that's good. What else jumps out? I mean, you got a freshman who's played 6 games, who's got 8.5 points a game, and then you got 2 more seniors. Is it all seniors here, or do we have other stories on this team?
No, there's some. I mean, Keith Brown, he's a talented freshman for us. He suffered a stress fracture in his foot the first month of the season, so, he's only really practiced with us those 2 days after the holidays before jumping into this stretch of games. We also, the kid Chris Lipscomb, one of our seniors, he's a 2-sport athlete for us. We miss him. He practiced once and then is suiting up to play Babson on the road. So, we have some guys, beyond that. But right now, what's happened with our group, I think we have a lot of young freshmen and sophomores that are pretty good. But, we got seniors who've won a lot and played a lot of minutes and kind of have the position spread out pretty well. I mean, we pretty much cover our starting five with that. So, sometimes that blocks a little bit of the youth. And some of these younger college players, they kind of need to adjust as they, get into bench-type roles. That's not easy because most guys are star players in high school. So, all those things are hopefully going to try to come together for us and, as we keep building.
Talking to Kevin Betancourt, the head coach of Endicott. The team is, as we said, 10-3 on the season. Of course, they're a game behind Nichols, and we'll talk more about that coming up. Talking about the team, Coach, pretty balanced. You're outscoring your opponents by nearly 10 points a game, averaging about 70 points when you give it up on defense. Is this a team that can defensively shut people down, or is this a team that's got to be clicking on offense for you to win?
Well, I think it starts with our defense. Maybe that's just a coach's thing to say, but I think one of our biggest strengths is playing on the defensive end and then getting out in transition with our offense. And I think that's where fatigue, like a day like yesterday, we were a little sluggish defensively. We didn't really create any turnovers, didn't really get enough misses to get rebounds and break out because we have a lot of team speed. And they really kind of forced us to play in the half court offensively. And the shots weren't, falling from the outside. Looking at it, we ended up shooting 50% yesterday, but I think our defense starts everything. I think when we really can get stops and get out in transition, we're a pretty dangerous team. We got a lot of ball handling, a lot of guard play. So I would kind of more go on that side of things. But offensively, obviously we need to continue to try to execute, especially at the end of games. That's something we've even talked about dating back to last year in that Worcester game. Up 11 with 4 minutes left and kind of struggled executing in the half court and let them kind of get back into it. And then they got us in overtime. So, hopefully we can kind of still build both facets of the game.
Is that defense, offensive mentality what we see in that game? For example, Babson, you held him to 72 points. That's a very high-scoring offense. It can be. Granted, you only scored 60 because they're a defensive team as well. But is that what we see in that game? And what else can we make of that, especially what do you think of Babson?
Well, I think in that game, the start from our game against them, our experience, they had us 45-24 at the half. So they did have an explosive first half and kind of put us in a hole. I think a little bit of that was, being on the road, being maybe a little tentative with all the, I probably overhyped them up to a degree in the sense that I thought we played a little scared in that first half, but they're a great team. But I thought they have so many weapons. They're so dangerous, and they started hitting shots early, and it was just really difficult to keep up with them. And I thought in the second half, we were down 20, so we just started, kind of attacking them a little bit more and probably had a little bit more success. But, they put it on us pretty good to start that one. In regards to Babson, I don't know. I mean, I'm new to this Division III world to a degree, only having 3 years in. But being fortunate enough to be in a couple NCAA tournaments, that's as good a team as I've seen in person, certainly. They have all the pieces and, including, great coaching and senior leadership. So, I'd expect them to be a really difficult out. Joey Flannery, it always helps to have, let's just say, at least if not the best player, one of the couple best players in the country on your team. So they're going to be a handful for somebody in March, I would anticipate.
Obviously, coming up, you've gone on the road to Salve Regina. Then you'll come home with a big game against Nichols. Not that I want to skip Salve Regina, but that Nichols game stands out like a sore thumb right now. They've had 3 straight 20-win seasons out of a conference that obviously doesn't get in that large all that often. But the way they're playing, they're on top of the conference. You're a game back. That's a really big mid-January game in this conference and can dictate a lot, but it could also maybe tell the rest of New England something, could it not?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of respect for Nichols. They've been tremendous. They've won the regular season the last 2 years, and that's kind of maybe been a little overshadowed because, we've gotten, some breaks in the tournament. But, a tremendous program. They're very well coached. They play so hard, and just, days like yesterday where we drop one on the road that, at least on paper, it seems like, you're supposed to win. It makes me kind of appreciate how difficult a regular season title is, which Nichols has accomplished the last 2 years, And, since Tommy Glynn's taken over, 39-3 in the conference is in the regular season is impressive. Going to looking at their record. So, that'll be a difficult challenge like they all are. But it's hard to get too juiced up for games like that in January. I mean, we got to kind of handle our business, continue to improve. I think we'd be making a mistake if we put too much into that one January game. And, days like yesterday, those are where regular season championships are won sometimes.
Yeah.
Days where, it's not always on paper, this big matchup, but you got to go handle, do your job and handle your responsibilities. And, that's kind of where championships are won. So, I'd anticipate us obviously hoping to have a little bit of, added focus this week. I think, that Salve game, I think we'll all be looking forward to trying to get out there and play again and redeem ourselves and get back on the right track. And, Nichols, those games, they don't need any build-up with us. We know how challenging that one's going to be. And, the one thing I've been, making plugs with, it's just such an exciting brand. Both teams, they really make you get up and go. And, sometimes we have a ton of quickness, so that'll be like a track meet type game, I'm sure. So it'll be a fun one.
Obviously, you come from Bucknell, Division I. We'll get a little more into that in a minute. But then I looked at your coaching tree a little bit. You're not necessarily been at a school or in a conference, I should say, where the at-large bid was something that was a serious contemplation, even in Division I. And obviously that means you probably don't know any better than to have a conference that has an at-large bid. But can Nichols, can yourselves, can others in the Triple C position themselves, you think, maybe not this year, maybe this year, I don't know, if years in the future, to be able to compete for an at-large bid so that you're not a one-bid conference?
Well, I mean, it's certainly the goal. I don't really necessarily know the formula being new to the conference, but, we play 18 of our 25 within the conference. Yeah. So, you really have to have a pretty strong impact in those 7 games. And by no fault of anybody, sometimes you're able to get some, NCAC, NUMAC, those type of schools on your schedule. And then sometimes because the date's not matching up, you can't. So I think we all are trying to schedule as well as we can. I was really excited just to be able to get Babson and Middlebury on the schedule this year on top of some others. And, I think on given years, it's certainly possible. I will say, we were, whatever the record was, 18-10 going into the NCAA tournament. We came in 4th place in our conference, and we got in the NCAA tournament, and I didn't think we were outmatched at all. I think our conference really prepared us last year. I don't know the long history of it. Like I said, I've only been here a couple of years, but, I would put Nichols last year and against any team we played in terms of how good of a talented team they were. Last year we played Keene State, who was in the Sweet 16, Middlebury, who was in the Sweet 16. Obviously we played Catholic. We played Worcester, who beat us to get to the Sweet 16. I mean, we played some really good teams last year, and Nichols was as good as any of them.
Yeah, obviously.
So, it's just a matter of us having to try to build that resume. I don't know if it's possible, I guess, with 18 of our 25 games within the conference. I don't know how the math will all work on that. It's difficult for our league to really show we measure up maybe at times.
Yeah, I mean, the win over Catholic certainly turned some eyes, too. And I totally had forgotten about the win over Middlebury, of course, on the road, too, which is a tough place to play. Beat them 83-89 at the beginning of the season. That certainly looks pretty good. At Bucknell, I kind of regard it as a Division III school at Division I. And that's not a knock on Bucknell, but just the mentality there is very much Division III. Much of that conference is a Division III mentality, very much student athlete, and that there's bigger things out there. Heck, a lot of Division III coaches end up going through Bucknell on their way elsewhere. Is that a fair assessment? And how much has Bucknell influenced your coaching?
Well, Bucknell, kind of brought me into this whole college basketball world. I mean, being able to play for Coach Flannery, who, way back when won a Division III national championship, certainly inspired me. He's a guy who, he was at the first game I ever coached. He still texts me after most of my games. He's always kept tabs on me. His son's, playing at Johns Hopkins, so he's in this Division III world still paying attention. I don't know if it's a fair assessment anymore. I think when I first got there, I'd agreed with you. I think the Patriot League adding scholarships and, guys like C.J. McCollum, Mike Muscala in the NBA coming out of the league, I think it's evolved some. But certainly the student part of that is definitely emphasized strongly in the Patriot League. I mean, that's why you pick those schools. And, I always say when I give speeches, sometimes one of the main reasons I was able to even play in Division I was because I was a good enough student. The academic requirements of that league filter it out a little. So I'm sure there were some better players out there who might not have been able to play Division I, but my academics were able to allow me that chance. But, Bucknell, it paved the way for me, and I certainly always keep close tabs on them. My old assistant coach, who was the head coach of Randolph-Macon, Nate Davis, he's taken over now. They've off to a great start. I think they're 12-5. They just beat Holy Cross today. One of my college teammates, John Griffin, is helping him. So still closely connected to that program. I would say, between my Bucknell and then my job over at Bentley, my Division II job with Jay Lawson, it's really helped get me off to a good start in my head coaching career.
Before we let you go, curious if this is a toughest part of the season where you guys have kind of gotten to the midway point and now you're kind of grinding through things.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, once you get back into that conference schedule, it's always difficult. I think this time of the year, too, when the guys are on January break, as much as we always build up that time that, hey, we always sell it like you can kind of be like professional basketball players. You're not in class right now. You just focus on ball. I think sometimes that gets you out of your routine a little bit. And I think sometimes the classes help regulate that and keep you waking up early, getting yourself going, eating regular meals. So I think this is usually, a very difficult time of the schedule. It has proven to be for us each of the last 2 years in terms of being a little bit choppy, but hopefully the guys, and this is for all teams, just hopefully everybody can stay engaged and get the message of just playing their best basketball. And as we get into February, hopefully we can try to make another push towards a championship.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking time to join us here this evening to talk about your goals. Obviously, a lot of eyes on you, and you're playing well. Obviously, I think it's going to be a fascinating conference to watch this year as well. As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
No, I just appreciate you having me on, and really looking forward to the challenge of the rest of the season. I think it's going to be a really great conference here.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Coach. Good luck the rest of the season. We'll look forward to talking to you down the road.
Thank you, Dave.
Kevin Bentoncourt joining us here on the City of Salem Hoopsville Hotline. Again, the team is 10-3 overall, 5-1 in conference play. They'll be at Salve Regina on Wednesday. On Saturday, at home against conference leader Nichols. And, we're going to call it a big game. Obviously, Coach will try and keep his team a little bit more focused on the task at hand. When we come back, we'll go to the Hoopsville Mailbag, see what you have to ask us, and we'll wrap up the show as well. Last chance for questions, hoopsville@d3hoops.com via your email. You can always tweet us as well, at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. You're watching Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. We wrap up Hoopsville right after this.
My name is Marcus Walker. I was All-State, won a state championship, a high school All-American, and played college and pro ball. I played because I love the game. I grind to be the best. I sweat because I put in work. I'm strong because I believe. When I want to bring it before game time, I come to the house that college basketball built, the CBE. No matter your skill, take it to another level. Elevate your game right here at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Great moments are born from great opportunity. That's what you have here tonight. That's what you've earned here tonight. This is your time. Now go out there and take it.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you got any questions for us, you can always tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. Of course, you can also always follow us on Instagram at D3Hoopsville as well. That's where we promote the show, or at least tell you where we're traveling to, et cetera, et cetera. Earlier in the show, we tried to run our interview with Stevens Point Athletics Director Brad Duckworth. It did not go according to plan. We did pre-tape that interview earlier today with him. We will be running that here momentarily after we take another break. So you will be able to hear that, and then we'll wrap up the show. In the meantime, we want to go to our Hoopsville Mailbag. This is a new segment we've introduced to the show, thanks to some of the suggestions out there, and so we're trying it. This is also a huge advantage for those who can't listen to the show and get your questions answered. Again, those who can't watch the show live can watch it on demand, or you can listen and download the podcast via SoundCloud or via iTunes, and we hope you do so. This is a chance for you to email us and get those questions answered on a future show. So hoopsville at d3hoops.com. Hoopsville at d3hoops.com is the easiest way to do that. You can also always ask us questions via Twitter, but to be part of the mailbag, we ask you to email them to us. And we'll start with our first question that we received this week. There seems to be little discussion about the Big Red and their great start to the season at 12-1 and 6-0 in conference. Can Denison run the table in the NCAC? Can anyone in the NCAC match them? Well, that's a great question. I would say this much. I've been on the verge of having Denison on the show. We did so much coverage of Great Lakes basketball, not basketball, but Great Lakes, basketball. Great Lakes, especially on the men's side, but with Thomas More, we did quite a bit on the women's side too earlier in the season that we just wanted to take a little bit of a break from some of that. We'll get back into it. Denison, heck, we could talk to him as early as Thursday for all I know. But Denison right now, 12-0, 6-0 in the conference. They have a 2-game lead on Ohio Wesleyan, DePaul, and Worcester, who are all 4-2. Denison has wins over Ohio Northern, Case Western Reserve, Worcester, Wittenberg in overtime. They lost to Capital, beat Ohio Wesleyan earlier this week, and beat Allegheny by 41 on Saturday. They've got one of the best records in the conference. Interesting enough, the second best record in the conference is Wittenberg at 9-4, though Wittenberg is 3-3 in conference action. No, I don't think Denison can go undefeated in this conference. No, I don't think Denison's going to run away with it. They've got a 2-game lead on Ohio Wesleyan. Ohio Wesleyan's 7-6. Ohio Wesleyan's one of those teams this season. They had a 3-game losing streak against Capital, Illinois Wesleyan, and Otterbein early on to go 2-3, and they have lost 3 of their last 4 to WashU, Denison, and Worcester, with only a win over Hobart, and they lost to Worcester by 23. Part of me says Ohio Wesleyan will wake up. Part of me says that Worcester will improve, though I don't think Worcester is as good as many would have thought they would have been, or maybe have gotten used to. We will have actually Worcester on sometime in the near future, is what I should say, now that I think about it, because we know Steve Moore is closing in on the all-time record, and the win over Ohio Wesleyan may have done that. So Thursday we may get Worcester on the show, so it'll be a little longer before we get Denison here. I think the Big Red have a very good chance of winning the regular season. Will they keep ticking along at 12-1, 6-0? My gut tells me no, and it's not a knock on them. It's just it's a grind. They've got tied for second DePaul at 8-5, 4-2 coming up. They've got Wabash after that. Wabash is 7-6, 3-3. Then they've got Hiram and Kenyon. Kenyon's 2-5, and Hiram is 6-6. Then Oberlin, then Wittenberg. Then it's Ohio Wesleyan, Worcester, DePaul, Allegheny, Hiram, Wabash. I just feel like they're going to run into a couple real tough challenges. I don't think they can go undefeated the rest of the way. NCAC isn't as challenging as I thought it was going to be. I certainly think they're doing tremendous. I think they'll move up the rankings here as more and more teams lose ahead of them. I think a lot of people have questions for the Big Red. They weren't exactly on anybody's radars at the beginning of the season. So, yeah, I'll be fascinated to see how this plays out. No, I don't think they go unblemished. I think we'll learn more about them. I think Ohio Wesleyan, listen, maybe I'm naive, but I think Ohio Wesleyan will wake up at some point, and maybe make a run there to finish second or try and take first. That's just my gut feeling. We'll see if I'm right. I could be dead wrong on that, but we'll see. But yeah, I think they're a good team. A lot of questions. I mean, just a lot of questions. But I don't think they can run the table. I think they'll take a loss or two, and it's not because they're not good. I think the Ohio Wesleyan might finally wake up, and other teams are certainly challenging enough as well. Back to the mailbag. Still lots of undefeated teams on the women's side. Of the non-top 10 undefeated teams currently in the D3Hoops.com rankings, Mary Washington, Trinity, Texas, Ohio Northern, Whitman, Messiah, who stands the best chance of staying undefeated the longest? That's a terrific question, Margaret in Virginia. I would argue that it's probably going to be Trinity. Whitman has got, of course, George Fox, Lewis, and Clark and Puget Sound in their conference. I just don't see that happening. Messiah nearly lost to Stevenson the other night. Stevenson missed a shot at the buzzer that would have won it. I don't see Messiah getting through Stevenson and Albright twice more without taking a blemish. Of course, I say that forgetting who Messiah played this weekend, so we'll quickly look that up. Messiah is certainly playing well, and I'm very impressed with them. I just don't think they're going to get through this conference, which has been tough in the past. Yeah, so they barely beat Stevenson, then they beat Widener. They've got Hood, Albright, Lebanon, Val, Lyco, Arcadia ahead. I think Albright on the 14th, it's at home, might be a win for them, but then they got to return it against Stevenson on February 1st, and then the last game of the season is against Albright. I just don't see Messiah running the table in this conference. Ohio Northern, certainly playing well. This conference is sneaky good. Baldwin Wallace is 11-2, 4-2 in conference play, sitting in second place, and they're the next opponent. If anything, Ohio Northern could lose their next game on the road at Baldwin Wallace, and if not, then February 1st at home against Baldwin Wallace. Mary Washington's not going to stay undefeated. I think Christopher Newport could knock them off. I think Marymount could knock them off. York, if they continue to play well, could certainly be a dangerous team to watch out for. I just don't see Marymount running the table, or Mary Washington running the table here. Remember, Christopher Newport's also undefeated, though they're in the top 10. So I don't think Mary Washington goes undefeated. Trinity, Texas, I think has got the best chance. Nothing against the SCAC. It doesn't scare me. I don't think it scares them. They have got a point to prove from last year, having lost one of their best player halfway through the season, which greatly affected how they finished the year. But the conference doesn't scare me. Texas Lutheran might be their biggest test, maybe Austin. But I think Trinity, Texas goes the longest undefeated from that group of teams that was asked. That's my guess. And finally, the last one we got from Bruce in SoCal. Thanks for adding the mailbag segment. You're welcome, Bruce. It is great to see your input from listeners. Well, we're trying. Best D3 arenas, in your opinion, to watch a game. This one is difficult. And Bruce, I shouldn't have even pulled it out of the mailbag. There's a lot of places I love watching a game. I got a chance to watch the Final Four at Hope. I think it's a wonderful arena to see a game in. I'm looking forward. This is a hint at what we're trying to pull off at the end of February. Maybe going there for the Hope Calvin men's game and the Hope Trine women's game. We may go there to see it in a true Hope fashion. Calvin, 30 minutes away, has certainly got a spectacular facility. I have not seen it in a basketball setup, and I've not been there for a game. But it's certainly a wonderful facility, and I think well worth watching a game at. You got a bunch out in the Midwest that I think are tremendous. Stevens Point's Quant Center is pretty good. You hear great things about the Shirk Center for Illinois Wesleyan. I'd love to get to a game at places like Chicago or WashU. But as far as places I have been, Rochester's Palestra is just awesome to see a game in. It's old-fashioned. It's different. It's not what you expect. I just loved my experience there seeing a game. It's too bad the Cave Center is gone, or the Cole Center is gone at NYU. That was a heck of an experience to see a game at, though I wouldn't say it was one of the best necessarily. Shamelessly, I'll tell you the Salem Civic Center, but we'll move on from that. I think the Salem Civic Center is outstanding to see a game at, obviously in Salem, Virginia. But as far as places I've seen games, I've seen places at games at a number of great arenas. Rochester's is at the top of my list for sure. Hope's is at the top of my list for sure. I am sure I haven't thought of somebody that stands out as one of my favorites. At the same time, there's a number of places I would like to go see a game, and I haven't had an opportunity yet, and they're on my list. But by the way, I did get a chance to see a game at Roanoke, one of the brand new arenas in Division III. I think it's a wonderful place to see a game at. Except I think it needs to get through its growing pains phase or its newness phase before I would chalk it up. I think they need to work on a few things to improve it. as you do for all new buildings, as you get used to what they're like. And then I think it'd be an outstanding place to see a game. So those are a couple off the top of my head. I am quite sure I have missed some. If you have an idea, tweet them to me. I'd certainly love to hear your thoughts on places that are great to see games at. I know there's a bunch in the Midwest I haven't had a chance. Augustana was fun to see a game at. I've seen games at Augustana, but I wouldn't call it one of my favorite places. But it certainly was fun. There's other wonderful locales too. But I hope that answered the question. By the way, we didn't get a chance because of all the Stevens Point stuff to talk about the Hoopsville Classic. And let me tell you, the Hoopsville Classic was outstanding. We got to see Salisbury, despite going 0-5, certainly played well. Hardin Simmons showed me what I thought they were as being a really good team. Ramapo, I jumped them into my top 10 despite being unranked because I think they're that darn good after I saw them. I think that's the best Ramapo team we have seen in Salem. In Vegas. And they've been there 6 out of the 7 years, including a year they came in ranked and played Stevens Point. Lewis and Clark and Puget Sound women's basketball teams impressed me, despite Lewis and Clark's struggles this week. That's more indicative of the conference. That is definitely a 4-deep conference this year. It's going to be fun to watch that race all the way down to the end. You heard from Lori Payne earlier introduce our Center Court segment. It's nice to have those segments from the WBCA, but those games were fun. And even teams that didn't necessarily play tremendously well, it was fun to see different styles and different groups. Simpson and Co. on the women's side. Wonderful to see the Banana Slugs of Santa Cruz get a win over Wheaton and then see Wheaton respond the next day and get a victory themselves. It was a good tournament. My whole point of it all was, one, we have openings for next year at the D3Hoops.com Classic in South Point Arena in Las Vegas. Let us know. We'll get you in touch with Sport Tours, unless you know how to get a hold of them yourself. It is worth going, folks, and it's worth doing. And by the way, Ramapo is the latest team to send us a jersey. I want to thank Chuck McBreen and his group for sending us this. They saw the TCNJ jersey, not TCNJ, New Jersey City jersey that we got and said, oh, we can't have that, as Chuck McBreen said, and he made sure to get us a Ramapo jersey. So we have one. Now, you'll notice some of the jerseys we've gotten recently we haven't been able to hang. That is going to be changed soon. We've gotten some things to help change them, and we will be putting them up here and redoing the studio a little bit in the next few weeks to get them dressed up and looking good behind us. Going to take another break. When we come back, hopefully the interview we had with Stevens Point's Brad Duckworth will be in working order, and you get to hear from the AD, and then we'll wrap up the show. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. More Hoopsville after this.
My name is Marcus Walker. I was All-State, won a state championship, a high school All-American, and played college and pro ball. I played because I love the game. I grind to be the best. I sweat because I put in work. I'm strong because I believe. When I want to bring it before game time, I come to the house that college basketball built, the CBE. No matter your skill, take it to another level. Elevate your game right here at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Great moments are born from great opportunity. That's what you have here tonight. That's what you've earned here tonight. This is your time. Now go out there and take it.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you have been enjoying the show. Obviously, we're just getting underway. Last block kind of catching up on what we were unable to catch up on Thursday. Plenty more to talk about. We could do the show almost nightly, to be honest with you. though honestly we couldn't, but we could, and we'd have plenty to talk about in Division III. Of course, one of those things we're talking about in Division III is Stevens Point. We will always remember, if you have questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoops, or email us hoopsville@d3hoops.com, or tweet us at D3Hoopsville, hashtag Hoopsville, et cetera, et cetera. You know that stuff. It's on the bottom of your screen. And, of course, Stevens Point kind of blew up the show on Thursday, had a lot of interesting content to talk about. We have continued to talk about it on D3Hoops.com, on the D3 boards as well, and, of course, on social media. There's plenty of questions, and we're not going to get a lot of answers. This is one of those rare instances where we kind of understand where the NCAA is going with an investigation before the NCAA comes out to say anything about their investigation. We may not know from the NCAA until March or April, once the timeline and the processes and the procedures go through the necessary steps and deadlines, et cetera, of knowing what happened in this case from the NCAA's investigative point of view. However, we will continue to try and talk to those we may be able to talk to regarding it, and we will continue to do that when necessary. And one of those cases would be the Stevens Point point of view. And I am honored to say that joining us on the City of Salem hotline is the athletics director of Stevens Point, Brad Duckworth. You may know Brad. He was the former athletics director at Alverno, former women's coach at Alverno as well. So we've had him on the show a few times, so certainly not in this role. Brad joins us, and thank you for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me. I certainly appreciate it.
First and foremost, I say this a little tongue-in-cheek. Did you realize what you were walking into when you took the job back in the summer?
No. When I accepted the job, there wasn't a part of the interview that let me know about the compliance situation that we were having. But shortly thereafter, I was informed of the ongoing process, and it wouldn't have changed my mind. That's when leadership has to step up, and so it's been an interesting 5 months. But no, to answer your question, when I took the job, I wasn't completely aware of this.
I do hope you asked for an additional raise after the fact.
I'll give you my boss's number. How about that?
I don't know how much power I've got there, Brad. I need a raise myself.
There you go.
So obviously this is an interesting situation. We're talking about technically a repeat offender due to the fact that the same thing was dinged on the same program. Similar. I don't want to say same thing. Let me choose my words correctly there. Similar, because we don't know truly the connections. So it feels like it has a repeat offender connection to it, that Semling, who was on that staff, in the eyes of what I'm reading in between the lines, should have known better kind of mentality. From your point of view, and obviously you've only been there 5 or so many months, how's this process moved from A to B to C or whatever, and where is this process now? And yeah, we can go from there, I guess.
Well, the NCAA has a process when it comes to any sort of allegations or potential violations. And they alerted the institution of some potential violations in UW Stevens Point prior to my time, did an internal investigation. They concluded that we had some impermissible viewing of men's basketball student athletes out of season. At that point, the institution deemed them secondary in nature. Self-imposed three practices and a letter of reprimand, and submitted it to the NCAA. And those of us in the NCAA understand that they can do 3 things with that: accept it, they can add on the punitive measures and see if we agree with the additional punitive measures, or they can conduct their own investigation. And in this particular case, they chose to conduct their own investigation. We've reported and been as transparent as we can that their investigation phase of this is over. Once they got done with that in early December, we received word that their findings, or their investigation period, was complete, and their findings had led to 4 major violations. And we had a little bit of time to respond, but our response wasn't one of factual, it was one of clerical. If there was a typing error or a date error or a name error. We sent that back. They had some time to respond to us, and when they responded to us, they came in with a timeline and a to-do list. We are in the middle of the to-do list, and part of the to-do list is now that we know the allegations and know the violations, it's a self-governed process, so we were asked to work on a self-imposed penalty, and we did that. We did that in consultation with them and with our conference office and with the allies in which we could use, even knowing that this is a confidential process. So that's where we're at now. There's some steps going, as you mentioned earlier. There's steps that will take some time going forward, and then eventually this will end up in the Committee on Infractions, and we'll hope that the Committee on Infractions, accepts our self-imposed penalties, and we can start to move our men's basketball program forward.
Let me check on something that I think has been the crux of a lot of people's arguments for, against, whatever the case may be. And obviously in your media statement, it says allegation 1, allegation 2, allegation 3, allegation 4. Yep. Allegations mean that they're not proven. Allegations mean that there's still time to defend oneself, for lack of a better description, that there is no proof. However, in what you say, and I know how the NCAA process works, I also get this feeling under, maybe reading between the lines, that the allegations are the violations, and that the NCAA has basically stated, unless you feel otherwise, and I know there's a process to that, this is what we have found you guilty of, or found you, maybe not guilty is a wrong term, but found you having broken. Are these allegations maybe a different way of saying this is what you were found violated, and unless something dramatically changes, this isn't changing either?
Well, this is a process, but yes. I mean, if you were to ask an attorney, the word allegation has a little bit more, and trust me, I've had more than my share of a couple of attorneys give me some input on this, not just since it's broken. But the word allegation has a little bit more weight than just we're looking into this. At this point, we believe that, we're going to be faced with 4 major violations that were laid out earlier, and we're working hard in response to them. Technically, could this change? Could the committee? What will happen in all This is This is NCAA process, so this certainly shouldn't be bound by confidentiality. Whenever there's this kind of report, it goes to the NCAA when you self-report, and then the NCAA will put the report and the self-report together, or the self-imposed penalties together. They move that to the Committee on Infractions. The Committee on Infractions' purview is to do 2 things. One is to either accept or reject the report as it's written. Now, we assume that the Committee on Infractions will accept the report as written because the NCAA put it together.
Sure.
Could they come back? Sure, but we believe that'll be unlikely. Then they'll take a look at our self-imposed penalties, and they'll react to that. Do the self-imposed penalties satisfy what we're reading here in the report? And at this point, we believe they do. So that's what will happen moving forward.
So it is to be, obviously we're in that phase before it gets to that committee, and all schools are certainly going to feel that their self-imposed punishments will do enough justice. But the question that certainly surrounds everybody: are you nervous that it won't, and something like that national title for 2015 is in jeopardy of being pulled?
Well, anytime there's any sort of uncertainty, there can be some nerves. We don't know. Is there a possibility? Sure. I mean, the Committee on Infractions has their purview to decide what is a fair retribution to what is 4 major allegations or violations. We believe, through consultation, we didn't do this in a capsule. We didn't do this, as an institution in a boardroom. We talked to everybody that we were legally able to talk to. We believe that a 13-game suspension and a postseason ban is significant. We're talking about a program that's won 4 national championships since 2004. So postseason ban obviously is significant for this program. And, that's the purview. I can't speak for the Committee on Infractions, but we're hopeful through what we've learned that we've put in what we can put into this, and we'll see, I guess, as the process lays itself out. We believe we've covered our bases at this point.
Was a lot of this, several that I've talked to, both on and off the record, several that inside and outside of the department who knows about this investigation, or at least knows how the NCAA works. I've gathered that many on the campus, maybe primarily before you came on board, treated this as if it was a minor infraction, that it wasn't going to end up being that big a deal, that this would be done. I even got told beginning of October that we would eventually know the outcome and we would move on, no worries. When did it escalate to 4 major violations? And was maybe those on campus, including former administrators, who knows, maybe being a little naive?
Well, I think when you say it's minor in nature and it comes back to 4 major violations, I think that's probably a fair statement. When I took the position in July, we had at that point already submitted this as a secondary violation. When it escalates, when the NCAA gave us information that they were going to come to campus and do their own investigation, was, for those of us that have been around the business like yourself long enough, we like the NCAA. We certainly love being a member of the NCAA, but
you don't want them on your campus.
You usually don't say, "Hey, come on, Indianapolis. We'd love to treat you to dinner in Stevens Point." So we knew then. I knew then. I'll speak for myself. When they made the decision to come here, and then I had read what we're up against from the first report, certainly had an inkling immediately that we may be facing something much, much bigger than a secondary and a couple of practices. So they came, they did their investigation, as we've stated, that's complete, and they've recently given us their findings and their alleged 4 major violations. So it's been the last couple months.
I've gathered also that maybe that investigation found more. I know the prospective students, and I don't want to use the word practicing, let's find the exact word, observed approximately 16 men's basketball prospective student athletes as they participated in men's basketball student athletes in activities. That seemed to come out of nowhere for most people, even those like myself who had been trying to keep their finger on the pulse of this. It sounds like the investigation found more than just what the initial anonymous complaint and initial investigation had indicated.
We have been as transparent as we can be in this process. I really have to commend the institution and Coach Semling and our men's basketball program and anybody who's been through this. The thing that I've been the most proud of as a new administrator coming in is that we've had complete compliance and complete. We've worked with the NCAA in every way that we can. So, the first report that came out that was published in public about the secondary violations, which is allegation 1, didn't mention allegation 2. Obviously we have a second allegation, and that came out of findings somewhere, and that's about as much as I can comment on that at this point. But we did have a second, and then obviously we have the atmosphere of compliance, and then the failure to monitor. So when we initially reported a secondary violation, it was observation of athletically related activities, and since that point we've had 4 majors. So I guess one could conclude that. Obviously when the NCAA came here, they added on and came up with some things that we didn't find the first time around.
You're a former women's basketball coach, as we mentioned at Alverno. You're obviously have been this is not your first athletics director job either. A lot of people will say, well, come on, we're talking about a coach walking through a gym or so on and so forth. These are, if we start, splitting hairs here, we could find a number of schools in violation of these types of misconducts, especially on the activity side. I don't want to get into the prospective student athletes thing. That one's a little more complicated. But as far as just the regular activities thing, a lot of schools and a lot of people would say, "Geez, you could nail a lot of schools for this." This sounds like a little bit of splitting hairs, as I said. However, reading between the lines, I also gather that there's a difference in accidentally walking through and seeing your team practice and maybe doing it on a more concerted effort, that maybe the investigation found this wasn't just some accidental walks through of gyms, that there was a, as as it says, an atmosphere of compliance. That basically it was we can do a few things here and there and not worry about it. Is that a fair assessment, that this is more than splitting hairs? This is because maybe there was a pattern?
Well, and trust me, I'm not trying to dodge this question. That's part of the ongoing investigation. And when this is a final report, when the confidentiality is removed, I will gladly come back on your call and talk to you about how they came to allegation number one and what they found. So, in terms of speaking as the AD at Stevens Point, and obviously I've heard that same comment that, things like this happen everywhere. I guess the former coach in me might want to say that. The AD in me and maybe the father in me says, I guess I can't care what happens in the house next door. This is our house. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do things a certain way in our house. And, if it's happening next door, then it's happening next door. And I think every family or father or mother would say that. So, while there may be others saying, well, this happens here or there, and it maybe does happen here or there, we're concerned on our house and making sure that our house follows the rules as they're laid out. And, clearly in the NCAA's eyes, we didn't do that. And for that reason, we're facing some penalties, and we're going to put our chin right in the middle of this, and we're going to rise above it. And as Coach Bennett said the other day, this is a storied program, and we'll be back, and we will be, and we'll support Coach Semling and Coach Dernbach and the team the best that we can.
So let me ask you this, as a women's basketball coach: how easy or how difficult is it to remain in compliance when dealing with out-of-season practices? And I'm using that term generically. I don't mean that in the NCAA term of the word practice. I mean in the sense of an open gym where the team decides to get together, or you happen to walk past and somebody's shooting free throws. How difficult or how easy is it to stay in compliance surrounding off-season activities by your team?
It's a difficult process. It is. I mean, there's if you've had an opportunity to, we'll use our men's basketball facility. We play in Quant Gymnasium. The upstairs, the balcony area of that is a public walkway. There's ROTCs in that building. The strength center's up there. There's a dance studio up there. There's 5 classrooms right in that area. To get to the parking lot, you walk through there. So, the NCAA is pretty understanding about facilities, and the way facilities are set up. So, in terms of compliance, I mean, I think that's a tough thing to do. I think there's a difference between incidental and non-incidental. And just speaking as a former basketball coach, that's a tough line. You walk past a gym and a kid shooting free throws, like you mentioned. Well, if you need to talk to that young person and you think they may need something, it's hard not to say, man, if I could just walk in there and say, how are you? And I'm just going to speak as Brad Duckworth here. I'm not going to speak in terms of this investigation or anything else. I've had an opportunity to serve an institution as a dean of students and associate vice president of student affairs. And if you do retention research, they'll tell you the first 6 weeks of school for a freshman is the most pivotal point in anybody's career, in terms of retention. Well, they'll also tell you that in order to ensure retention, you should go to their environment. Athletics doesn't allow us to do that. I mean, as a former basketball coach, I can't go down to the gym with my freshman who's brand new and say, hey, how are you? And that's unfortunate. I hope it's something we look at. But as it's written now, to answer your question, it's difficult.
And some remember I wrote an op-ed regarding that line, though that 6-week thing would have been a nice nugget to have when I wrote it. I find it ironic, but we'll move on. Let me get to the decision of suspending Bob Semling and having Kent Dernbach take over. What what prompted you guys to finally say or decide, listen, this 13 game, the rest of the season, especially coming off of a game, by the way, it feels like it was last minute, though I have a feeling behind the scenes it may not have been. What prompted you to say, okay, you know what, our move here is to suspend Semling the rest of the season, half a season, and that is the move that's probably the most pertinent? And why was that decision made when it was versus sooner or later?
Well, as we've mentioned, it's a process that continues. So you follow the process. One of the things that I think is important that people understand is that the process, we are doing the best that we can at Stevens Point to comply with the timeline and the process and information as we receive it. I've been able to say publicly that we received more information back from the NCAA in the middle of December. Obviously, there's some time that goes through the process there. So this was a timely response to the process of the NCAA, and when we made the move to suspend Coach Semling for the remainder of the year. So that's just part of the timeline that comes through with the NCAA. In terms of moving to Coach Dernbach as our interim head coach, I have the utmost faith in Coach Dernbach. He's been around the program. He's a hungry young coach. As we saw yesterday, our guys responded to him and the situation and went to lacrosse and won a really, it couldn't have been happier for them, especially for the guys. But, in naming Kent, I'm in the business of helping student athletes and making sure that they have a great experience and can learn and can grow. And this is really tough on them. It's tough on Bob, but it's certainly tough on our guys. And to hear that your head coach is not going to be with you, and to hear that you can't play in the WIC tournament or the postseason is tough. So, we didn't have a lot of choices. We had 4 people in the building that with basketball experience, and that's Coach Egner, the women's coach. Well, I don't think we're making that move. That's Coach Gilbert, the assistant women's basketball coach, and right now we're not going to make that move. That's me, and I'm certainly not making that move. And then that was Coach Dernbach, and for some consistency for our program, and to give our guys a common language. We turned their world upside down. So familiarity in time of crisis certainly helps, and we believe that Kent brought that, and will help lead our men here through the next, now 12 remaining games.
I want to get back to the Dernbach in a moment, but I want to follow up a little bit more on Semling. When you told him, what was his reaction, or had he already seen the writing on the wall?
Well, as you can imagine, anybody who is being told that they're going to, basketball coaches, this is one of those professions. Doctors, coaches, you call people by their profession. There are very few of those things. And, so coaching next to his family is the most important thing in his life. So when we informed him of what we were going to do in this particular season, he certainly, you're not happy. He certainly wasn't happy. But this program is important to Coach Semling, and he's a professional, and in my opinion, he handled this as professionally as one could in such a tough situation.
I'll ask the question that has certainly been raised. I realize there may not be an answer to this, and I know I shouldn't have prefaced it anyway. Is Coach Semling's job in jeopardy when this 13-game suspension is over and or the NCAA report comes out? And I'm not talking from an NCAA point of view. I'm talking from a school point of view.
Well, 2 things, and let me be clear. We have suspended Coach Semling for the remainder of the year. I was asked that question at the press conference, and the question was suspended or fired. Suspended. It's January 8th, 2017. I anticipate that Coach Semling will be our basketball coach in the fall. And he'll be our basketball coach in 17-18. So that part, Coach Semling's job has not been taken from him. He is our basketball coach serving a 13-game suspension. So I think there was a second piece to that, but that's the one. he is our basketball coach.
Well, it was basically, this is a school decision. Depending on what the NCAA says, would his job be in jeopardy? Or let me rephrase it maybe better. Once the season's over and once the NCAA report is coming out, I would assume his job will be reevaluated.
Well, the NCAA doesn't really have purview to remove a coach. What the NCAA has is the purview to make it so difficult that a coach couldn't work somewhere.
Sure, and I don't, and that's why, and I don't want to say the NCAA is making a decision. I mean based on the NCAA report, based on what they end up stating, is what I'm getting at.
Well, it's a fluid process, but we believe what we've announced is what we don't. The investigation period is done. We don't anticipate there'll be more. There shouldn't be more in terms of violations or allegations. Now we're in the next phase of this thing. So, we've stated and we've said as emphatically as we can, Coach has been suspended for the remainder of the season. And as of today, we anticipate that he'll be our coach next season. So, obviously, like anything else, things could change. Could Coach Semling say, you know what, I've spent my time and I've been at Stevens Point, I've been at Green Bay, I've been in New Mexico, I've come back to Stevens Point, I've had enough? He could. We don't anticipate that, but he could. But as of today, we anticipate Coach Semling's going to be our coach next year, and we'll go forward from there.
And then my follow-up on Kent Dernbach, I've had several make the comment to me, and I think probably worthy of that. You talk about an atmosphere of compliance. You read between the lines. It wasn't just Coach Semling necessarily who probably was in on practice when he shouldn't have. You could argue, and I don't know the case, I realize that this wasn't a Semling-only situation, that other assistant coaches probably may have participated in these as well, and it may be surprising not to see Kent's name in the report when it comes out. With that in mind, it seems surprising to some that you would hand over the reins to Kent Dernbach when he may be, maybe by association, but also just as guilty as Bob Semling, if that's what we find out. So why give it to Kent, and why not, in yourself being the prime one I'm looking at, take over the program as we've known many of the athletic director to do in the past?
Well, that's a great question. If you move down to allegation 4, which is failure to monitor the men's basketball program.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm pointing.
Yeah. Well, there's a shared responsibility in compliance. While it is the head coach's responsibility, it is a shared responsibility. It's a responsibility of everybody in the institution, the head coach, the assistant coach, the athletic director at that time. It's a responsibility of everybody. And we'll be able to speak more about all the details of who did what and when they did it, and because it's, the beauty of the state of Wisconsin is we are bound by very liberal public record laws. So there won't be, not that we would want to anyway, but there won't be much that people won't be able to find out. So when this is complete, we'll be able to tell you who did what, when they did it, and so forth. To answer your question about Kent and moving him forward, first of all, I've been a women's coach for 19 years. Could I coach a men's team? Sure, I could. And could I coach, I could do that. But, I believed for our men, most importantly, they needed a familiar face. They needed to move the program forward. I mean, these are 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds that they haven't had enough life experience to experience adversity. Well, this is huge adversity for them. And I believe Kent will do a good job. I also believe that the institution needs an administrator right now and a basketball coach. And having one combined person, that was really never a consideration. It was, how can we service our students and remind ourselves that this is about an education, and that's where we came to the decision.
So what's the timeline from here?
Well, it's a fluid process. We anticipate this will be a bit now. We will submit our the stuff that they've asked for us over the course of the next couple of weeks, It goes to the NCAA, and the enforcement staff will finalize a report, finalize our self-imposed. That takes some time. It then goes to the Committee on Infractions. They've said that could take 6 to 8 weeks, and so we anticipate that it'll be April or mid-April, first part of May at the earliest before we get a final piece to this. So I guess at this point we don't anticipate another. What we said is, this last Thursday was the earthquake. There'll be a number of tsunamis following it. It's not, none of it is good, and we don't anticipate there'll be another tsunami here because there's nothing really else to come forward except the timeline. So I would guess the next piece of this would be middle April, first part of May at the very earliest.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything you wanted? I got 2 things left, but before we let you go, is there anything you wanted to make a point to either say to the Stevens Point community that have not heard it, or to the Division III community?
Well, number one, I want to make sure that I continue to repeat that this community is terrific. We moved our family here in the middle of the summer because it's a tight-knit community. We have one of the best Division III atmospheres in the country. We have one of the best Division III followings in the country, and we have one of the best programs in the country. And adversity will reveal character, and our character will shine through. We'll rally together and pull together around it. So we're a storied history, and we'll get ourselves back there, even though this has been a tough time for everybody, including Coach Semling and our guys. So thanks for that opportunity, and we'll come back stronger than ever here at Stevens Point.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on. Yes, I will take you up on the offer once it's out to have you come back on and discuss it maybe in more detail.
Sure.
Obviously, the 2 championships of 2015 have been put in question by Thomas More losing theirs, and I'm not saying you're losing yours. It's just an interesting timing that it's the same year, same championship season that we're now talking about on the pointer side as well. As always, as you know, I do give the final word. I know I kind of just did, but is there any other final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Well, I know a number of listeners follow D3 Hoops, and one, I want to compliment you, and I mean this in all honesty. You have been very fair in this process. You've been very accurate in this process, and you've helped your listeners understand that the NCAA and its membership is a process. So I want to, number one, say thank you to that and appreciate that, because that's hard to do, and you've done that. And so we appreciate that from Stevens Point. And lastly, and probably just as importantly, I want to commend our men and our coaching staff and our institution. I in some ways I'm the new guy, but I'm certainly now in this, and we have and will continue to do things as above board as we know how. We've been compliant with this, and we'll continue to react to the NCAA. And I look forward to the day that we can start talking about men's basketball in terms of how can we get to our 5th championship, and not this stuff. So thanks for your time. I certainly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Brad, for coming on. I appreciate that as well. It means a lot to us to be able to get the answer of things when we're able to talk to individuals like yourself. Good luck the rest of this process. I know you and I will stay in touch, and I'll look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you.
Brad Duckworth joining us again on the City of Salem hotline from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point Athletics Director. Yes, we could talk another half hour on things with him and get information and get insight, but we've talked plenty already. We will continue to find ways to continue to cover this story. This is not over. As he indicated, I've been told March or April. He thinks maybe April or May. Any of those timelines is accurate. It really depends on so many different factors. We'll keep tabs on this and see where it goes. We'll also keep tabs on the team and see where they go as well. And if more information comes out and is warranted, we will certainly cover it here on Hoopsville. With that in mind, we want to move on with the show. We have lots of coaches, and we're already well behind schedule, so we need to get going. So we have plenty to cover. Coming up, we will talk to Brooklyn women's basketball. We will talk to Emory women's basketball and Benedictine women's basketball. And don't forget, we'll head out to the Northeast. We'll talk to Endicott men's basketball. Plenty ahead here on Hoopsville. You can always follow us on Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville@d3hoops.com or join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville. Don't forget about the Hoopsville mailbag coming up at the end of the show. Email us hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Thank you for tuning in. Once again, thanks to Brad Duckworth and everybody at Stevens Point for their ability to help us out in our coverage, and we will be back with more Hoopsville from the WBCA NABC studios after this. And next, we're back now to avoid the confusion that you may be experiencing right now. We were anticipating to run that segment earlier in the show. We had some technical difficulties with the first video version that we had of that, and so we had to run it late. So some of those promos you just heard are obviously dated. We already talked to the Brooklyn head coach, and we've already covered the mailbag. We've already talked to the other head coaches, etc. So that is not coming up. We're going to wrap up this show that is way late due to those technical difficulties, and we apologize. Let me get to this point about Stevens Point. I don't know if I've been clear about. This is not over. Basically, the initial report has been given to Stevens Point. The allegations have been stated, and to be blunt, those allegations are basically the violations. The only way those 4 points and any others that may come out change is if the Committee on Infractions looks at its own investigator and says, we don't agree, can you rewrite it? And the chances of that, pretty darn slim. Now, they could also throw it out. Now, in the Thomas More case, remember, the investigation came back saying that the assistant coach basically broke ethical and moral rules, ethical rules in the NCAA. The committee and Thomas More certainly put up a fight on that one, and the committee agreed and threw that one out. So there is always the chance that the committee is going to look at any one of these 4 allegations and say, okay, you know what, that one we don't agree with. It's slim. There isn't an ethical charge that we see in these 4. 1 and 2 equal 3 and 4, to be blunt. 1 being the basketball coaching staff impermissibly directed, observed, and engaged men's basketball student athletes in athletically related activities outside the institution's declared playing seasons. And 2, impermissibly observed approximately 16 men's basketball prospective student athletes as they participated with student athletes in activities detailed in Allegation 1. Allegation 3 is during that same time period, Bob Semling did not demonstrate that he promoted an atmosphere of compliance with the men's basketball program due to his personal involvement in the alleged violations. And number 4, the scope and nature of the violations details in Allegations 1 and 2 demonstrate that the institution violated the principles of rules compliance when it failed to adequately monitor the men's basketball program compliance with NCAA playing and practice seasons and tryout legislation. So let me tell you how the math works on that. You have an allegation in number 1 that the coaching staff basically participated in out-of-season activities, and they can range from strength and training to, or strength classes to conditioning to, and I should point out, by the way, there was an allegation from the anonymous tip, according to reports that I read, that part of the classes that Bob Semling taught were part of this too. I've been told that may not be part of the investigation, but we'll have to wait till the NCAA comes out on that. But as part of strength training out of season, conditioning out of season, team getting together out of season and practicing together, the coaching staff impermissibly directed, observed, and engaged in that. It sounds like there's proof of that. And we're not talking about an occasional walk by the gym. This sounds more detailed than that. In the second one, in those same activities that prospective students took place. This is a big no-no in Division III. There's been multiple legislation that has been shot down overwhelmingly in Division III in the last couple of years to open those types of things up. We can get into a whole debate on whether that's a fair thing to do to prospective students, and I can be on both sides of that argument. But the rules are you cannot do it. You cannot essentially have a pseudo tryout for a prospective student athlete with the team, whether they're practicing with the team, trying out, whatever, at all. Allegation number 2 has 16 occasions based on that. That sounds like they've got a lot of proof regarding that one. So now it mounts. The third allegation basically says that Bob Semling did not have an air of compliance about this, meaning He either, and I these are my words, either said, we don't care about those rules, we're going to find ways around them, or those are minor rules, it's okay to break them, or he knew they were being broken and didn't care to fix them or encourage them to be broken. Anything along the lines of, basically they're saying you understood this was going on and you did not stop it. And as head coach of the program, you're responsible to be compliant with NCAA rules. You run your program, you run it right. Allegation 3 says you didn't run it right. Allegation 4 puts the cherry on the sundae by then turning to the institution and saying, and you knew things weren't right, and you knew that the coach may not have been having a compliance issue, and you did nothing about it. 4 is wide open. 4 could point in a half a dozen different directions all at the same time, or only one or two. It could be pointing at the former athletics director in Darren Montgomery. It could be reporting at the compliance director on the campus, who's the women's basketball coach, Shirley Egner, and I think some others. I don't think she's the only one, but I could be wrong. It could be pointing at other administrators in the athletics department, outside the athletics department. There's a whole number of people that could point to. But 1 and 2 equal 3, and 1, 2, and 3 equals 4. So, and clearly by the punishment handed down of suspending Bob Semling, for as much as they've suspended him, Stevens Point has the feeling from the NCAA that there's plenty of evidence and that number 3 is damning, and so is number 4. And that's where we're at. Now, we're going to have to wait from the NCAA to find out how badly the NCAA feels about this. They're either going to say, listen, Stevens Point, we accept your punishments. We'll leave it at that. They will tack on some administrative punishments. There'll probably be a fine. The school's going to have to go in front of the infractions committee probably every year or every other year to prove their compliance. They're probably going to have to go to extra compliance seminars and meetings. That's a no-brainer. That always happens. That stuff's a rubber stamp. We know that stuff's coming. That's not what we're looking for. That additional punishment is obvious. The additional punishment that may or may not happen is, does Semling get suspended by the NCAA further? Or really, they may not suspend him further, but they may put a show of cause on him. And a show of cause is that's what Duckworth was alluding to. The show of cause is the most damning punishment. Makes it very difficult for him to get a job. If a show of cause is on for a year, 2 years, 5 years, and I think there was a case at Hunter or Hartwick, I want to say it was Hunter, and believe it or not, I was an IT professional. Long story short, we won't get into the details, but got a show of cause, I believe, of 5 years, which means if he gets any other job with a school in the NCAA and as any job, I think even associated with athletics, and it may not even be associated with athletics, but period, they have to prove some things to the NCAA over the course of 5 years. Basically, that guy's never going to be employed by an athletics department or anybody or any job remotely associated with an athletics department in an NCAA school. Baruch got a couple show of cause for the vice president and the former women's basketball coach, basically making that women's basketball coach, he'll never have another Division III head coaching job. May never have an assistant head coaching job either. May never have another athletics job, period. The show of cause is what's going to be interesting. I don't know if they'll throw that on Bob Semling. But that's what Brad Duckworth was alluding to. And there may be others. That's what we don't know. We don't know if they're going to accept the punishments or tack on. And I'm not talking about the administrative punishments. I'm talking about more. Will they add another year of postseason ban? They will most likely put the school, if not the program, on probation. The question is, do they put the program on probation or do they put the entire athletics department on probation? You can make an argument for both. And then the question is, do they lose the national title? I think you can argue it both ways. I think you can look at this and say, listen, there were no ineligible students. The team didn't have any problems with the players. The games were clean, as it were, unlike in the Thomas More case where technically Sydney Moss was actually ineligible, making those games invalid due to the amount of time she played. In that case, no, I don't see the title being taken away from Stevens Point. However, you can argue the other side of that these extra practices, as they were, air quotes, practices as they were, allowed the team to be more cohesive before October 15th, meaning October 15th comes along and the team coaching staff doesn't have to spend as much time doing, let's say, A, B, and C like everybody else does. They can get right to D, E, and F of the plan. They're further along, and as a result, they get into the season better, and as they get through the season better, they take less losses. They're in better position for an at-large. They're in better position to host the NCAA tournament. They're in better position in the WIAC, which allows in the long run for a better run through the NCAA tournament and thus a national championship. You can make that argument. And I don't know a lot of coaches who won't look you square in the face and say, darn right, that those advantages can lead directly to a national championship. And if that's how the NCAA feels about it, then yes, that trophy is in danger. Again, I can argue both, so I don't know where this goes. It's interesting. And I will say this now. I know there's an argument out there like, well, this is happening at schools across the country. Yes, I will not deny that this is probably happening accidentally or purposefully at other schools in Division III. It is the practice rules are difficult. However, Brad Duckworth, I think, said something interesting in that statement. It doesn't matter what others are doing. It matters what we're doing. And if we're doing it incorrectly, and the NCAA has found us to be doing it incorrectly, then we are at fault. Be damned anybody else. I think this will do two things. One, other programs will wake up and go, oh, we need to clean ourselves up before we're caught. The other thing that will happen is more schools will be reported. How the self-reported or anonymously, it will be reported before the NCAA. Here's the deal. You want to report this first. If the NCAA gets a tip or finds it themselves first, the punishment is worse than you reporting it first. There's an example in Division I where that isn't the case. We could go into that, but nonetheless. Could Stevens Point being used as an example? Yes, but not because they're Stevens Point, not because they won a national title. They may end up being used as an example because they are a second-time offender. Bob Semling was an assistant coach under Jack Bennett when they got caught the first time. They should know better. Even if there was completely a different coach, a new staff altogether, and new administration altogether, it does not matter in the eyes of the NCAA. Let's give you a huge example here. Do you remember, was it SMU football got the death penalty back in what was the 90s for their tactics? And if you don't know the story of that, you should look it up. Players were getting cars, they were getting apartments. I mean, it was ridiculous. They got the death penalty that killed that football program and athletics department. Let's just say in 5 or so many years, SMU football comes roaring back. And they're doing the exact same thing or some of what they were caught doing back in the 90s. It's completely a different administration. It's a completely different coaching staff. Everything's different except for the fact that they already should know better. Just because it's new doesn't mean you ignore the fact that something came out before. It's a second-time offense. And I have a sinking suspicion that the investigation didn't find occasional problems. They found significant problems, or they found significant breaking of the rules, or they found a conspiracy, for lack of a better word, to break said rules. That's what has escalated this to a major violation. And I will warn those now. Some parties are still trying to spin this like it's no big deal. It's a big deal. In the eyes of many in Division III, practice rules and recruiting rules are major tenets of Division III. I've made this argument on the boards before too. No rule in Division III, no rule in the NCAA is minor. They're all major. It's just a question of, is the violation minor or is the violation major? This is clearly a major violation. In the first offense under Jack Bennett, the WIAC asked the NCAA if they could investigate it for the NCAA. The NCAA approved that. They approved of the very minor penalties associated with that. And Stevens Point ran off to win a national championship after losing a couple preseason practices as a result. The NCAA was asked again, from what I've been told, by the WIAC, can we investigate this as well for you? And the NCAA said no. The NCAA was taking this as a major offense from the get-go. And when investigators show up on your campus, you know it's a major offense. There are people still trying to spin this and wrap their mind and think this is a minor deal. This is not a minor deal. I am hoping that this is the worst of it. I am hoping what Stevens Point, Brad Duckworth, the chancellor, and whomever, the punishments that they put forth, the NCAA says, you're fine. Here are a few other administrative punishments that you need to deal with. Otherwise, we're good. We will now close the books on this, and we will move on. I fear the NCAA wants to set an example. And let's remember one key thing, folks. The NCAA, when I'm talking about them, is not Indianapolis. The NCAA is fellow Division III members. The infraction committee is made up of fellow Division III members. The rules are created by the entire group of Division III members. This is not Indy sitting in an office saying, well, you broke our rules. How dare you do that? We shall now punish you. No. This is Division III turning to a fellow institution and say, hey, remember these rules? We wrote them together, and you're breaking them. We, as a group, agreed to these rules. You, by default, have agreed to these rules, and you have chosen to break our rules as a group. We will not have that. That's what this is. Don't think this is Indy. Don't think this is D1ites going, oh my Lord, I can't believe the Division IIIs are breaking these. No, this is Division III saying to Division III, stop. Is this a bigger problem? Possibly. And this message better be heard. And I will go back and say this again. The one we really should be talking about is Baruch, and we're not. Leave it on that. We're going to have a lot more to talk about at Stevens Point over the time, but we are way over our time. We're past 3 hours, and I apologize for any of you who may time your life around a 2-hour show, including my wife. We're going to get going. We'll be back on the air Thursday. Remember, we are now into Sunday-Thursday schedule, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, which means on Thursday we will be covering the East and Mid-Atlantic, Great Lakes, and West regions primarily, along with the NABC Coaches Corner. And then back on Sunday night, we'll once again tackle the Northeast, the Atlantic, the South, and the Central region. So the South sometimes bleeds into a Thursday show just because of travel schedules. Depends on the schedule. We will also alternate in our men's and women's and conferences, etc. If you have a question for our mailbag, email us, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. If you have a question for us in general, tweet us at D3Hoopsville and hashtag Hoopsville, or email us, as we mentioned. You can also join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville, or join us on Instagram at D3Hoopsville as well. I want to thank all of our guests for coming on the show. A number to name: Alex Lang from Brooklyn, Christy Thomascutty from Emory, of course, Coach Avercamp from Benedictine. Of course, I also want to thank Brad Duckworth from Stevens Point. I have a feeling I am forgetting somebody. Of course, Endicott, Coach Betancourt from Endicott for coming on the show. Also, the sports information directors from all those institutions for helping me out. Really appreciate it. We'll be back on the air Thursday. Don't forget a couple notes. We do have the Hoopsville Marathon show coming up in about a month's time. Be on the lookout for more information. We will also be debuting our fundraising efforts once again. And if you have a jersey like Ramapo and New Jersey City, and any of the rest like Brockport who have sent them in to us, or you have anything else you'd like to send us as part of the show, please do so. Email us or tweet us. We'll get you information on how to do so. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Really appreciate it. And again, appreciate everybody for listening. Sorry for the technical difficulties today. It's just one of those shows, but we got through it. You've been listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Thank you to our sponsors, including the City of Salem, for the sponsor of our hotline. Appreciate you taking the time to listen. Hope you enjoyed it. And remember, you can watch us on demand or download the podcast on SoundCloud and iTunes. Good night, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday.